3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor, 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to what is a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course, always streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. That's 855-212-4227, and you could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter X at Zach Gelb. That is ZACHGELB. We are here up until 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific today, the final show of the year of 2024. The next time you will hear me on this network will be on Thursday. We are off Tuesday. We are off Wednesday. Back, though, for a new year and a new run at the Zach Gelb Show on Thursday and Friday of this week. Alex Azarum is here Also, Nico Kudavides, Iamaliava, Scarlatos is here as well, producing the extravaganza. And former head coach Mike Sanford is going to join us. Not to be confused with Mike Sanford, but Mike Sanford will join us at the top of the hour to do a little college football talk with him as the college football playoff does resume tomorrow evening, as you do have Boise State up against Penn State. And then on New Year's Day, you got a trifecta of games getting started with Texas, Arizona State, leading into the granddaddy of them all with Oregon up against Ohio State, and then the nightcap between Georgia and Notre Dame. So there's a whole lot to do today. Let's open up, though, with the NFL, coming off all the mayhem that did go down yesterday in Week 17. You'll have Week 17 conclude tonight with the Lions going up against the 49ers. I do think Dan Campbell's going to play his guys. I don't know for how long. The game doesn't mean anything really for Detroit because next week on Sunday Night Football, Week 18, win and you win the NFC North and you get the number 1 overall seed in a matchup between the Detroit Lions and also the Minnesota Vikings. But let's start with the Minnesota Vikings up against the Green Bay Packers. I went into this game with two thoughts, one about Minnesota and one about Green Bay. The first thought with Green Bay was, can they finally show that they are ready to take that next step this year? Because last year, they were a football team, first year without Aaron Rodgers. What was going to happen? How good was Jordan Love going to be? What was Matt LaFleur going to look like without Aaron Rodgers? There were a lot of questions. And in the first half of last season, there was a great unknown still of what the Green Bay Packers were going to look like. But then Jordan Love, I think he finished off the season with 20 total touchdowns and like 1 interception. He was surgical. He was sensational. And then he walked into the Drama Dallas Choking Cowboys Stadium in Jerry's World, and they just obliterated and they abused the Dallas Cowboys. They ended up getting to the second round, and then they could have won that game up against the 49ers. Love, though, didn't throw the ball away. He threw it across his body, got intercepted. And you look back at the Green Bay Packers and you said, wow, that's a nice tone-setting season. That's a nice set the tone for the future of your organization. Oh, my goodness gracious. The Packers got it right again as they just go from great quarterback to great quarterback to great quarterback. So there was a lot of buzz about the Packers this year. Now, we knew they played in a division where the Detroit Lions now were the standard. A lot of us didn't know what to expect out of Minnesota. I had higher expectations, obviously, than what has transpired with the dysfunctional Chicago Bears this year. But you looked at the Packers and you said, okay, if you're telling me going into this season that the Niners, the Eagles, and then the Lions are the 3 best teams, who else can go make a run for the Super Bowl? Who else can get into the mix? There was no one really else in the NFC East going into this season. In the NFC South, no one ever thought that would be a Super Bowl contending team. People like me, before the start of the season, had the Rams getting to the Super Bowl, so the Rams were a sexy team. But then pretty much everybody else was saying, Green Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay, they could be a Super Bowl contender this year. And when I look at the Packers this year, they sit there with the nice record. They sit there with the fine record, an 11-5 record, but let's go through their wins. They beat the Colts, they stink. They beat the Titans, they stink. They beat the Rams when the Rams were like 1-4, I think it was, to start the season. They beat the Cardinals are no good. They beat the Texans. Okay, solid win. Texans, though, also another team that have not been able to elevate and take that next step this year. They beat the Jaguars, they're horrendous. They beat the Bears, they're an embarrassment. They beat the 49ers when Brandon Allen was their starting quarterback. They beat the Miami Dolphins, big whoop. You know, I know Tua was in that game, but that game was outside. Tua doesn't play great outside. They beat the Seattle Seahawks, solid victory. They beat the Saints, they stink. So you go through 11 wins, and maybe 2 of those wins you say, they're impressive. Now, with that being said, I would understand someone that calls me up at 855-212-4227 and say, Zach, you're criticizing them for winning. They could only play who's on their schedule. Well, there's also 5 losses on that schedule. The 5 losses, the Eagles, who are one of the best teams in football. The Vikings, now twice, one of the best teams in football. The Detroit Lions, twice, one of the best teams in football. So it's easy to say, hey, Zach, don't crush them for their victories. But when they had to play larger magnitude games, they failed in every single one of them. when I mention your two best victories being the Texans and the Seahawks, how do those two teams, the Texans and the Seahawks, stack up against when you look at the weight that's behind playing the Eagles, the Lions twice, and the Minnesota Vikings twice? Those two teams pale in comparison to what the Eagles, Lions, and Vikings are. Because right now, the Eagles, Lions, and Vikings are your true contenders to get to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. So this isn't a miserable season for the Packers. This isn't a bad season for the Packers. But it is a good season where I can't walk into the postseason saying, hey, they're going to be great. And a lot of people view things differently. I look at it, you're either bad, you're average, you're good, or you're great. And in order for me to call you great, you got to show it. You got to prove it. And I don't have a long list of teams. Like some people say, oh, if you're a top 5 team in the AFC, you're great. Oh, if you're a top 5 team in the NFC, you're great. No. Great to me is an elite status. It's an elite tier. And if you ask me right now, who are your 3 best teams in the AFC, the 3 best teams in the NFC? NFC, no order. It's easy. Eagles, Vikings, and then also the Detroit Lions. In the AFC, it's the Chiefs, it's the Bills, and it's the Baltimore Ravens. And those are the 6 potentially great teams in the NFL this year. That's it. But I look at Green Bay, I have now given them multiple opportunities to say, hey, we are here. Hey, this could still be our year to take that next step, and they haven't done it yet. And next week they play the Chicago Bears. Who gives a rat's ass? So can they go into the postseason and make a run? Maybe. Am I going to expect it? No, because all year long they have showed me they're a good team. They're a playoff team. But when they go up against the tougher teams, they're not a team that I could trust. And yesterday, I know the final score says, hey, they only lost to the Vikings by 2 points. Zach, maybe you cut them some slack. They scored touchdowns in the fourth quarter to make that a game. At one point, that was 20-3. 20-3. They were lucky Sam Darnold threw an interception. They scored 4 plays and 16 yards later. And then Sam Darnold went right down the field. Kevin O'Connell was aggressive, and the Vikings put the ball in the end zone. And then at the end of the third quarter is back up to 17 points. Anytime the Packers made you think they were getting back into the game, Sam Darnold and the Vikings had a response. Even towards the end, when it got down to a 2-point game, the Vikings were aggressive right out of the gate, throwing the football to, I think Ham was, and they ended up picking up a bunch of yards, and then boom, that set the tone for that drive. So the Packers were never in that game, even though the final score says they lost by 2, where you actually thought and tangibly could grasp onto it, man, Green Bay's going to go win this game. So that was another missed opportunity against one of the elite teams in the NFL to show that you belong if you are the Green Bay Packers. Now let's get to Minnesota. I love this Vikings team. I have a soft spot for this Vikings team. You know, I look at those 6 teams that I just mentioned that are great teams. People would love to see Buffalo win a Super Bowl. A franchise has never done so. You know, no one's going to be crying if Kansas City doesn't do so. They just won back-to-back championships. You look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens, it would be neat to see Lamar Jackson, a 2-time MVP, possibly a 3-time MVP after the season, get his first ring. You look at the NFC, the Eagles just won a few years ago, but they're a fun team with a lot of entertaining players. But then you look at the Lions and the Vikings. And I know Lions and Vikings fans won't like, because I'll say this, they'll be like, oh, no, pick my team. No, pick my team, because you guys are rivals. But the Lions, who couldn't be happy for that fan base that's been tortured if they won a Super Bowl? And same could be said for the Minnesota Vikings with how many disastrous defeats that they've had throughout the years. But that Vikings team, unless if you're a fan of a team in the NFC North, or if your team's going to be going up against them in the playoffs, if you're being objective about it, though, there's zero reason to hate them. And what Sam Darnold has done this year has exceeded all my expectations, and it's absolutely spectacular. It is really damn cool to see what Sam Darnold has been able to do. So I take a glance and I see what Sam Darnold's been for this Minnesota Vikings team. It's been anything, like I couldn't even imagine this, what he's been able to do. You look at what Darnold did in New York. He was known for mono and seeing ghosts. Then he goes to Carolina, right? He was leading the league in rushing touchdowns, then got hurt. He's bouncing around the league. His career was over. His career was donezo. It was shot. And we all knew that the Vikings were a good destination for a quarterback to land, but they drafted J.J. McCarthy. J.J. tears up his knee, unfortunately, in the preseason, and Sam gets this opportunity to start. So, yes, Sam needed the Vikings, but I also don't want to take away from what Sam has been able to do. If Sam, let's say, went to the Chicago Bears this offseason, do I think Sam's having the successful season? No, I don't. But you look at the right coach with Kevin O'Connell, a great 1-2 punch at wide receiver in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. You got Hawkinson back. You have Aaron Jones as long as he can hang on to the football. And you know what really separates the Vikings and what is really impressive? It's their defense. Because if you just had the offense, then it would have been a repeat of what this team was a few years ago with Kirk Cousins, where they won all these games in the regular season, and then they went up against the Giants in the playoffs, and Daniel frickin' Jones carved them up like a turkey on Thanksgiving. It was crazy. Defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. But the last 2 years, Brian Flores, who should get another coaching job, I don't know if he will because of a lawsuit, he has done a phenomenal job with this Vikings defense. And if you just have the offense, I don't view you as a Super Bowl contender. But when you also factor in how great this defense has been, yeah, the Vikings absolutely could get to the Super Bowl this year, and they could absolutely win it all. And who would have ever thought we would have said that before the start of the season? Like, if you would have told me before the start of the season the Vikings would make the playoffs, okay. Be a Super Bowl contender? I would have never seen that. But if they win coming up on Sunday night, they lock up the number 1 seed. That means they're off wild card weekend, and then they only have to win 2 games to get to the Super Bowl. And going into that building, I'm not saying you can't get it done. Like, can the Eagles go into Minnesota and win? Yeah. Can the Lions go into Minnesota and win? Yeah. But it ain't going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. And that's a really fun team. And it leads us to this. The future of Sam Darnold. We talked a lot about this last week. We had Ben Lieber on from the Vikings Radio Network. Does a great job, former Vikings linebacker as well. And Ben Lieber joined us. And I said to him, I go, even with as great as Sam has played this year, I think they're going to let him walk in the offseason. Because even if it's a Baker Mayfield contract, maybe there's a chance that he stays. But if he's going for $45, $50, $55 million a year, then I think the Vikings are going to say, this was our system. We have J.J. McCarthy. We believe J.J. McCarthy could be just as good in our system. That was my take all of last week. And Ben Lieber said to me, you're right. He goes, that's what I expect that's going to happen. But things can change. Now, you go win a Super Bowl, it's going to be tough not to bring Sam Darnold back. You even lose in the NFC Championship game where, let's just say, your defense let up a big play and it wasn't your offense's fault. Or maybe a special teams error happened, or it's just a great, unbelievable game. Let's say Lions and Vikings or Vikings and Eagles, and one of those teams just make a field goal and you lose at the end of the game. It's going to be tough not to bring him back. It is. Now, I'm not saying he's definitely going to be back, but the first time and all throughout the year, I've thought, even with this spectacular play of what Sam Darnold and what he's been able to do, I've always thought he's not going to be back. But you see the elation that was displayed in that locker room yesterday when all the players on the team are waiting for Sam Darnold to come into the locker room, and then they're spraying their water bottles on him and going nuts, and they're hoisting him up over their shoulders and propping him up. There's something in this sport called chemistry. And just because that moment happened doesn't guarantee that he's back, but it further enhances the chance of him coming back next year. So I'm not usually a guy on the radio that says, I don't know. You usually tune into me. You want an opinion. If you put a gun to my head, I would say the Vikings don't win the Super Bowl and Sam Darnold's not back next year. That would be gun to my head. But can I tell you and feel that I'm great in that opinion and that's going to happen? No, because the Vikings easily could go win the Super Bowl this year. They can. They could win the Super Bowl. But for most of the year, I thought to myself, he's not going to be back, and they'll go to McCarthy because that was their plan. But yesterday was one of their moments when they're sitting there 14-2. They could lock up the number 1 seed next week and win the division, and they could be 15-2 and have the number 1 seed. And you see that emotion in the locker room, and you start to think to yourself, Maybe you get the best of both worlds. Maybe you tell JJ, hey, we want you to wait a few more years. And let's see what happens with Sam Darnold. Do you bring both back? And maybe Sam Darnold turns out, I hate to say this, to be like the Daniel Jones, where it ends up being that Sam Darnold, right, had one good year, and then after that could never recreate that magic. Or maybe Sam Darnold continues to be that guy, and then you trade J.J. McCarthy. And I don't know what J.J. McCarthy would go for. If you're a team that's early in the first round, I don't think you're trading that first-round pick for J.J. McCarthy. How would J.J. McCarthy stack up this year against a Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward? Right, that's a fascinating question. Could you get J.J. McCarthy for a second-round pick that maybe could turn into a one? Those are all things that are on the table. But that's a huge conversation with the Vikings. And sometimes we can't appreciate what the Vikings are doing in the now because it sounds like we can't because we're talking about the future, but you could talk about both. So, yesterday after the Vikings win, I'm all about creating content and then repurposing content. So after the Vikings won, we had that clip with Ben Lieber, and I just reposted it. And there was a Vikings fan out there, Mr. New, who was not happy with myself and Ben Lieber for posting a clip from last week after the immediate aftermath of a great Vikings victory. He was not happy with me posting that clip again, talking about how Ben and I both think Sam Darnold won't be back next year, and he had this to say on social media.
Zach, why are you posting this? Why every time we get a win? Why every time we get a win do I got to see something about J.J. McCarthy? Why? Also, Ben, why are you making these takes, dude? Why are you out here saying yeah, we're going to get rid of him, when then you're out there interviewing on there yeah, you're just a great team, blah, 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 but we're going to get rid of you. That's a dumb thing to do. It's a dumb thing to do. Why? Because we need every single fan to support this year. I'm not worried about next year, dude. It's been so long. I've been waiting 20 years for this, since 1998 when I went down to Florida, when I went through Atlanta, bro, and we missed that kick, and my brother's heart broke, and my family's heart just crushed, and all their faith crushed. I've been the sole supporter, man, and it's so hard to keep it going, and it's so hard to tell everybody to keep faith when you guys keep saying JG 2025. Why not support Sam 2024, and let's get this win. Skol!
I absolutely love that clip. And to just try to paint the picture and how this guy looks. I'm watching the video right now. He's got 2 earrings. He's got a Minnesota Vikings purple hat on. He has a purple undershirt with a gray t-shirt and then a flannel that is open. He has some sort of necklace on, and then he has a Band-Aid over his nose. And his hair is kind of like Shaggy from Scooby-Dooby-Doo. That's a great take. I don't care if you want to rip me and Ben Lieber. No skin off my back. That was an entertaining take from, I believe his name was Mr. New on social media. We'll get that up on my Twitter, at Zach Gelb, ZachGelb. And he's in a room. I'm watching this again. It looks like it's a basement, and there's all these Viking posters up there and all these Vikings bobbleheads. But that's a guy, right? That even though we're talking about the future of the Vikings, you can root for the Vikings winning it all when you hear all the pain behind his voice about what he's been through as a fan of the Minnesota Vikings. So with that being said, Mr. New, if you're still listening, what do you think the Vikings should do moving forward? You think they should bring back Sam Darnold? You think they should turn the baton over to J.J. McCarthy next year? 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. Is there any reason to believe that the Green Bay Packers, after what they've displayed this year against the elite teams, which has not been pretty, can they actually go on a run and find a way to get past where they were a year ago, which was the divisional round of the NFL playoffs? Take a time out. It's the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. When we do return, we'll get into this whole Cam Ward situation and why my opinion has changed from what happened yesterday when I was on the radio, even though the bowl game was over the weekend and I was talking about it. But I've had a change of opinion, and someone else I'm not happy with. It's not Cam Ward. It's somebody else. I'll tell you who when we return in 5.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. A little party up by DMX, bringing us back on a Monday. I feel compelled to say this every time I hear this song, but when Zach Gelb was 13 and had his bar mitzvah, this is what I walked out to. A little party up by DMX. Nico is here with us today. Well, are you a big music guy? Like, my favorite musician ever is Bruce Springsteen, but I'm like all over the place. I love Jay-Z. Used to like Kanye West, but that was one of the best concerts I ever went to, was Watch the Throne, Jay-Z and Kanye West. I've seen Billy Joel before, obviously. I've seen Kiss. I've seen U2. I've seen Avril Lavigne, Armin van Buuren. We were talking a little bit about this last week when I was kind of quizzing Azaram and seeing what he actually likes and his music interests. So I'm all over the place when it comes to music. My favorite musician ever is Bruce Springsteen. Yourself, what kind of music do you like?
Yeah, I'm all over the place too. Rock, pop, rap.
But if I said you could listen to one artist the rest of your life, like mine would easily be without hesitation Bruce Springsteen. Yours would be?
Oh, it's so tough.
Come on. What do you listen to the most? You had to pick one.
I listen to everything. I guess if I had to pick one, gun to my head, I'd probably go Bon Jovi.
Ooh, okay. Little Bon Jovi. So I'm actually tonight, I am going to a concert that I never thought I would ever go to. And it's a jam band. Everyone knows them, Fish. I'm going to Fish at Madison Square Garden. And I can't wait for the people watching at that show tonight. Because that is a very interesting, how should I say this in the right word? Puffy kind of crowd. So that's going to be a lot of fun people watching tonight. I am going with a buddy of mine, and we are going at 6:15. I'll get off the air, go to this place, Mustang Harry's, have a few drinks, have a little fun, use your imagination. And then I will walk into Madison Square Garden. I think they went on last night, 2 minutes past 8 o'clock. So try to walk in like 7:45. And I'm very, very intrigued just to see what my reaction is going to be to this show tonight. So Zach Gelb will not be here tomorrow, and I will not be here Wednesday. But we are back Thursday and Friday of this week. And Fish is the band that I'm going to see tonight. Azaram, who's your musician? If you could only listen to one musician the rest of your life, who would it be?
The first person that came to my mind was J. Cole, probably.
Wow, okay. Yeah. I wasn't expecting that out of you, Azaram, if I'm being honest with you.
What'd you think?
I don't know. I thought kind of like rock and roll, or like, I could see, because you're very quiet, I could see you also being a big screamo kind of guy. Usually the quiet guys are the ones that end up like listening to the screamo music as well.
No, I'm not. I'm not like heavy metal.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
I think that would fit your personality. But anyway, I got to get into this Cam Ward stuff. So I said this yesterday when I was on Sunday Morning Football, that the decision by Cam Ward in Miami to sit him out the second half of the bowl game is not a decision for one iota of a second that is going to impact his draft stock. I don't believe it whatsoever. Malik Neighbors last year got the LSU receiving record and then sat out the second half once he broke that record. And clearly that didn't impact his draft stock. He was the second wide receiver off the board, and he ended up being the 6th overall pick to the New York Giants. And look at the season. Malik Neighbors, with no quarterback, has been able to produce in the NFL. He's been spectacular. So I'm not naive enough to say, hey, that decision by Cam Ward, whoever made it, is going to be the reason why he falls in the draft, because he's either going to be the first quarterback taken or the second quarterback taken in this upcoming NFL draft. With all that being said, in the moment when it happened, this is the way that it felt to me before we got more context and information about it, and people that I also talked to. The moment when it happened, and I'm usually someone, I never rip a player for sitting out a bowl game, and if you want to play, wonderful, we appreciate it. So when it happened, I did not like it, because it came off to me as someone that, and Cam Ward is not a selfish player, but it came off to me as someone that ended up breaking a record, most passing yards and most passing touchdowns in college football. But let's be real, it's probably going to get broken anyway by Dylan Gabriel. And football, the records in football usually are meaningless. And people be like, oh, you can't say that. But the way that we talk about individual records for baseball is totally different compared to individual records in football. But the way in the moment that it came off to me was, hey, he got the record and then quit on his team. Or he got the record and then bailed on the second half. And to me, what I said on Sunday and what I said in the immediate aftermath of when it happened, either play in the bowl game or don't. Don't kind of have 1 foot in, 1 foot out and be like, oh, I'm only playing until I get the record. But then with more and more people that I talk to in this conversation and people that are connected to this decision, this was the plan supposedly all along. That they were going to play Cam Ward for a half, and then they were going to let Emory Williams take over to get some experience in a bowl game. That's what I was told. That this was a Mario Cristobal decision. This is what Mario Cristobal and Cam Ward agreed on before the game. Okay. If that's the case, though, Mario Cristobal if that is true, and I believe one person that told me this for that to be true, Mario Cristobal did a disservice to Cam Ward then after the game. Now, Cam Ward didn't talk to the media, from my understanding. I saw him do one interview with WQAM, which is the radio home of the Miami Hurricanes, but he didn't talk to, right, the guys that cover the team on a daily basis, or, you know, all these national reporters and all these random reporters that are there for a bowl game. So I would have liked to have heard a little clarity from Cam Ward on this, but Mario Cristobal is the CEO of Miami football, and he dropped the ball in a big-time way, because this was the exchange after the game. Here is Mario Cristobal answering a question on why Cam Ward only played in the first half.
Mario, when did you and Cam decide that he would play a half, and what did you view as the pros and cons of having Cam Ward play the first half and Embry play the second?
Well, I think all meetings with players and decisions like that, we make them in private and we keep them in private, you know, so I'll defer not to answering questions as it relates to that. But I know he played his best while he was in there, and certainly Emery tried his best as well. Like Jalen said, we were rushing the ball really, really well, and just came up short.
So when Mario Cristobal says what he said, I'm going to keep all those conversations with the player private, that feeds into the narrative of, hey, Cam Ward only cared about the record, and this was Cam Ward's decision. Where a lot of people that I trust, and one in particular, are telling me this was the decision that was made all along, and they knew that this was coming, that Emory Williams was going to take over in the second half. And I asked the follow-up, and I got, good question, don't know the answer to it. Well, what would have happened if Cam didn't get, to a different source, if he didn't get the record in the first half? You know, would they have kept him in there for half number two? And that person said, I don't know the answer to that. But the plan was that Williams was going to get on the field. So if that's true, and I preface that by saying, if that is true, because I trust the people that are telling me this, but I don't know it to be absolutely positively true when it comes to this. But I do trust those people. But if that is true, that this was the game plan all along, then Mario Cristobal, you dropped the ball in the postgame. Because you know what people are going to say talking about Cam Ward, and they were crushing Cam Ward in the last 2 days since this decision happened. All Mario Cristobal had to say was, I appreciate the question. We had a plan. We devised up a plan going in that we were not going to play Cam the entire game, and eventually for the experience in a bowl game, we were going to go to Emory Williams because we wanted to see more out of him. That would have been it. All right, coach took it on the chin. All right, coach, it was your decision, fine. Whether it was or wasn't, but him basically giving that non-answer, and we're going to keep those conversations private, it added fuel to the fire of, hey, what Cam Ward did was absolutely gutless. And once again, I'll be abundantly clear on this. In the moment, I thought I didn't like what Cam Ward did. I thought it was only about the record, either play in the bowl game or not. But when you get more information on this, if you make me kind of say, what do I believe is true? I think Miami had this plan. They knew this plan going in. And then Mario Cristobal did, I mean, a hellacious and embarrassing job afterwards. So to be abundantly clear, this will not impact. That was a dumb conversation that anyone ever had. Oh, this is going to impact Cam Ward's draft stock. Yeah, the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns, the New York Giants, and, you know, if they have the access to get him, they're going to say, yeah, we're going to bypass on Cam Ward because he sat out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. You know, give me a break, for crying out loud. But I do understand people's emotion with it. I do, and I had emotions with it. You know, I wasn't angry about it. But you could say, oh, the bowl game is meaningless. You know what? I was around the Nebraska team for a little bit this past week in New York City, and the bowl games for guys that have never played in them before, Nebraska hasn't played in one in a long time, it means something, right? And it's a bonding experience with your teammates that you're going to remember for a long time. So you could say it's meaningless because it's not the college football playoff. And I've said before, oh, they're meaningless. But in terms of a team value, for guys that are going to be back next year or guys just that aren't, it still means something to them that put in the work all throughout the year. And it's a fun entire week experience. You don't just go there the night before the game. You're there the entire week. There's events that the bowl puts on for all the players for them to actually enjoy, and also the coaching staffs and their families too. So I'm not like people, I heard my guys, Tobin and Leroy Horde on WQAM were saying like I was attacking Cam Ward over the week. I wasn't. Everything I said about Cam Ward was I didn't like the decision. And I think you either play in the game or you don't, but you don't do, I'm going to play for half and not. But when you get more information, like on what a lot of people believe this was the plan devised by Mario Cristobal, then Coach Cristobal owes us, and I know that's his personality, basically to give nothing, but you owe us a better answer. And not us, you owe Cam a better answer, because then if that's the case, Cam's name was wrongfully dragged through the mud. So those are my thoughts on that. 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. Let's take a timeout. We'll come on back. We'll update some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We'll get to a news brief next. Update time first, though. Here is Pete McCarthy.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Zach, the college football playoff quarterfinals start tomorrow night with Boise State taking on Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. But we do have some college football action on this Monday at the Music City Bowl. Number 19, Missouri and Iowa are tied at 14 as they get to the latter stages of the first half. Tonight, the Lions and 49ers go at it on Monday Night Football in a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. It won't need much beyond that tonight. The 49ers are eliminated from playoff contention. The Lions' only advantage would be if they tied the Vikings next week, and we'll see how long the Lions starters play with that being the case. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid would not say whether he'll play his starters against the Broncos on Sunday. The Broncos clinch the final wildcard spot in the AFC with a win. The Jets have a pair of early head coaching candidates. Ron Rivera and Rex Ryan will interview, according to reports. The Browns will allow Mike Vrabel to interview for head coaching jobs this week. 7 NBA games tonight. The Knicks look to run their winning streak to 8 against the Wizards. The Cavaliers visit the Warriors in 10 Eastern. The Kings are in action after firing head coach Mike Brown. They're hosting the Mavericks. I'm Pete McCarthy.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is play Infinity Sports Network. That's it. Play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
And it's time to Ask the Pros, where you, the listener, gets asked us a question. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at INS Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag #AskThePros. Be listening later in the extravaganza when we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Let's go to Jerry Jones. He got heckled with some words of encouragement, with a lot of sarcasm by some Eagles fans before the Eagles game up against the Cowboys. This courtesy of NBC Sports, Philadelphia.
Jerry, you're doing a great job this year, man. Keep it going. Keep it going, Jerry. Great job. Four more years. Keep doing what you're doing, Jerry. We love you in Philly. We love you.
Hey, I know you do.
We love you.
I'll try to live up to my standard this year.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. I applaud, okay?
You're good.
Say what you want about Jerry Jones, but he knows the way that those fans are meaning it. Like, just keep on being horrible. Keep on being just a terrible football team. We love it, Jerry. And it's easy. Like, some other owners would get very combative there. But Jerry Jones just kind of smiles and goes, all right, you guys did a good job getting me. All right, let's go to Marlon Jackson, the former Colts player. He's on Wish TV, and he rips the Colts for their poor performance up against the New York Football Giants.
You still are playing for pride in the fact that you are in the National Football League and that you have a resume each and every week where you have to put it on tape. And that right there today was not what anyone wants to see on tape. It's not going to keep you employed in the National Football League. Poor effort all the way around. And we can talk about coaching and decision making. We can talk about schematics, but it starts with want to, energy, effort, drive for success as a player. And I did not see that today. Defensively, putrid. I am disappointed as an analyst and as a former Indianapolis coach with the effort that we saw today with so much opportunity on the line. And that's what we go out there, and that's the product that we put on display. Just poor all the way around. These players should be ashamed of themselves representing the Indianapolis Colts in this city and this organization, because that is not the standard in which we play with at the Indianapolis Colts.
Can't disagree with anything that he just said. Now, he wasn't the only former Colt to chime in yesterday. Pat McAfee put out a tweet, and it was a long tweet. It was almost a book. And he basically undressed the entire organization and ripped the organization from top to bottom and talked about how he hears players are constantly late, goes back to the Anthony Richardson decision to tap out of a game, and just how undisciplined this team is. Well, that tweet went so viral. Like earlier this morning, it was at 10 million views. And I'm sure it's way north of that by now. But Shane Steichen had a press conference today, the head football coach of the Colts, and he had to address the Pat McAfee tweet and what he was saying about players constantly being late. Here's the coach of the Colts.
Yeah, Shane, I don't know if you saw Pat McAfee's post-game tweet or if you were made aware of it, but he talked about players showing up late for treatment, for meetings. He wondered about the accountability. Is that true? Buck suggested that it was an issue at times throughout the season.
Yeah, I think with any team, right, not everyone's going to be on time every time, but there is accountability, and guys are held to a standard, and that is talked about in-house, and I don't think that. And I think, with anything, I think Pat, he's a former alumni that wants to see the Colts do well. Just like all our fans want us to do well. And when the standard isn't, not getting in the playoffs, it's frustrating. So it's frustrating for a lot of people, myself included. And that's why we talk about the standard just being raised so we're not, in these situations.
We could have a surprise firing. I know he's only been there for 2 years. But Chris Ballard, how do they bring him back as GM? Right? He's been there for a long time. He's 69-1 as an NFL GM. So if you're getting rid of the GM, are you going to keep the coach in Shane Steichen? You can. But with how nasty this has gotten, where you've lost Marlon Jackson, you've lost Pat McAfee, heck, Peyton Manning identifies more as a Denver Bronco than an Indianapolis Colt now. So there's major problems in that organization. Can I see Jim Irsay making an emotional decision and get rid of Shane Steichen after 2 years? Yeah, I could. I don't think it'd be the craziest thing in the world. But geez, when you lose Pat McAfee, who all he's done is supported the Colts, it just speaks to where your organization actually is. I wonder if they lost Hot Take Hickey, though. That's my question. Because he's the dog on social media with the fire around him when it comes to the Colts. I tell him all the time the organization's an incompetent joke. And he's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's good. I haven't seen Hickey. I don't know if Hickey's in today, but I wonder where his takes are with this football team. All right, let's go to Xavier McKinney of the Packers. He was asked if the Packers are one of the top-tier teams in the NFC.
I want to say yeah. But right now the story is we haven't beaten those teams. So I can't sit up here and say, yeah, we on the same level if we ain't beat them. So in order to be on the same level, you got to beat these teams. So like I said, we got to be more on our details. We got to play cleaner. We got to start faster. And, that's just what it is. We got to stop saying, we want to fit. Like, it's here now. We can't, it ain't no, it's here now. It's just what it is. So we got to be in the moment. We got to be present where our feet are, and we got to do a better job. And like I said, myself, got to do a better job of making sure that we start faster, making sure that we play cleaner, and getting everybody, on the same page.
Your two best wins this year were the Seahawks and the Texans. When you've gone up against the Eagles, you lost. When you've gone up against the Lions twice, you lost. When you've gone up against the Vikings twice, you've lost. So you can't say you're a top-tier team. And he didn't. He wanted to say yes, but he knew he couldn't. And we'll see if the Packers in the postseason can change that narrative around. And if they don't, then they're just a good team. They're not a great team, and we'll see if then they could do it next year. Sam Levitt, the quarterback of Arizona State, says he will prove that he's better than Quinn Ewers coming up on New Year's Day.
Yeah, I saw it, and, just congrats.
Yeah, I've watched him for a fair amount of time now. I'm just excited for the opportunity. People keep counting me out since day one, and I'm gonna go prove I'm the better quarterback. And that's how I feel since day one. So I'm gonna go put everybody on the map.
So that was Sam Levitt, the quarterback of Arizona State. Now let's hear Quinn Ewers respond to what Sam Levitt had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it, and just congrats to them on a great year and a great season. I've got to watch some of their games, and he's a talented player, and they're a fun offense to watch, and again, just excited to be up against them.
Yeah, that's Sam Levitt saying we need that confidence, and he needs to say that because that's what that team is built off of. Quinn Ewers, I think he kind of said, okay, I'll take that personally. Well, listen, let's see if Quinn Ewers can show up and play a great game. But man, that's the biggest spread of these 4 college football playoff games. We'll see how it plays out coming up on New Year's Day early between Arizona State and Texas. Let's go to Will Howard. Ohio State goes up against Oregon. Will Howard says every time Ohio State has lost this year, they just beat themselves. It wasn't really anything the other team did.
I think so. I think, you go back and watch the film and, I just didn't, and I'm hypercritical of myself, and I think we all are here, but I just look at it and I'm like, man, I don't think anyone this year beat us. I think we beat ourselves every time. And, you watch and we had the turnover, in our own 20-yard line. And they got the kick. That's 2 possessions they stole in the first half. And then, obviously the way the game ended, and we're still 1 point away.
Yeah, you lose, take it on the chin, and don't discredit the other team. Real quickly, Micah Parsons did something similar. Let's hear it for the Cowboys player.
You look at their play, they have 2 big runs and 3 good deep shots. Other than that, we made them earn it, and you take away we really take away the scoreboard. It was about 5 plays that decided this game. And you hate to say that because it's a lot of football, but, the 2 deep shots to Devontae Smith and the one to A.J. Brown, and then also Devontae on that slant, for the most part, we're making them earn it. 3 yards, 2 yards, 4th and 1s, which is good football for when you're playing a team like the Eagles. But the other side is that when you play in those big teams, we understand big plays is going to happen. You understand, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, some of the best guys in the league, they're going to make a big play.
That was terrible. As bad as Will Howard answers was, Micah Parsons was even worse. The Eagles beat the Cowboys 41-7. Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee, were the quarterbacks. But only if you take 5 plays away, you would. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And you know what? If I was a little bit older, I would be dating what are you talking about? Oh, jeez. Coach Mike Sanford joins us next. We're talking more college football playoff when we return in 5.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on the Infinity Sports Network. The college football playoff does resume once again tomorrow evening, as we do have Penn State up against Boise State, and then we'll see 3 matchups on New Year's Day. With Ohio State, Oregon, you will have Arizona State and Texas, in addition to Notre Dame and Georgia as well. And we'll head out to the guest line right now as we gear up for the college football playoff. And we will see the second round of these games with the former coach at Western Kentucky, also was at Colorado, played at Boise State, coached at Boise State, and has coached at like everywhere there is in college football. And that is our guy, Coach Mike Sanford. Coach, appreciate the time. Thanks for doing this. How you been?
Zach, it is great to be on. If you remember the last time that I was on your program, I was at Mountain West Media Days. So this is a culmination of a really cool journey for me now that I'm in the media space. And I'm actually here at the team hotel, or actually the media hotel for the Fiesta Bowl and the college football playoff that'll be taking place tomorrow night. And it's gonna be a very fun matchup.
Yeah, I remember that. You were at the media days and you were like in a storage closet. And you had like this equipment guy or a personnel guy that was walking in and interrupted you during the segment.
Do you remember, Zach, that to really bring this thing full circle for me personally is that storage closet was housing Gin and Juice by Dre and Snoop because of the Arizona Bowl. They were pitching this concept of the Snoop Bowl. Well, heck, I ended up calling the national broadcast on the radio yesterday. So it's a lot of fun for me to be a part of that as well. 2 days ago.
All righty, let's get to these games. I'll start you off with Boise State up against Penn State. With all these players, Abdul Carter, you got Tyler Warren, Drew Aller, clearly Ashton Genty, who finished second in the Heisman. I think the most important player, which is going to determine how close this game is the quarterback for Boise State and Maddox Madsen. He's protected the football really well this year, only 3 interceptions, but he's got to find the way to be aggressive, take his shots in this one, and also still find the way not to give the ball over to Penn State.
Yeah, I had a chance to interview Maddox Madsen yesterday at the media days for both teams, and I would say that his demeanor was very stoic in a good way. He didn't look like the moment was going to be too big for him, and that's been something that has embodied who Maddox Madsen is that he doesn't let his highs get too high or his lows get too low, and frankly, that's a bit of his play style as well. It's not necessarily going to blow you out of the water in terms of his arm talent or athleticism, but he does everything pretty dang well, and he's made very good decisions this year with just 4 interceptions on the season. I do think that this Penn State defensive front presents a very unique challenge. Boise State has seen Oregon this year at Autzen Stadium. This is going to be one of the first times since game 1 for the Boise State team that they're going to have all 5 offensive linemen fully healthy and up and running. So I think that I think the matchups are going to be good in the trenches, and Maddox Madsen's just got to get away from putting the ball in harm's way. Even though the interception numbers aren't high at all, there have been a lot of dropped interceptions. If you're a Boise State fan, you've seen them, and you're just going, oh. And so whether he's got great luck, I just think Penn State athletically, if they get their hands on some of those footballs, then you might see a repeat of the SMU. So the turnover battle is going to be number 1 in terms of Boise State trying to pull off the unthinkable, which is to upset a double-digit favorite.
Yeah, I also think another thing that's not being talked about a lot, because a lot of people just parachute in, right, when talking about Boise State. You've watched every snap of theirs this year, so have I. And you look at Ashton Genty, you see his numbers, and you would never think that this guy's been banged up and really hurt this year, but he has been. I know the rest can concern some teams because, are they going to be rusty? But I think the rest here is going to help Boise State because now you have Ashton Genty as healthy as he's maybe been since the start of the season.
Yeah, the tear that Ashton Genty was on, Zach, you watched this just as closely as I did, and I follow this team, and I cover this team for Bronco Nation News in Boise, Idaho. It's been that game, that he was on that tear, just putting up unbelievable numbers, and then that UNLV game happened. The first UNLV game, he hyperextends his elbow, and really in that game, he played through that pain, but he was wearing a bionic arm. He had a huge elbow brace on, and it really neutralized one of his greatest weapons, which is his stiff arm. He ended up trying to carry the ball in his bionic arm, and it didn't go great. He fumbled in a game or two. So I think having him back to being fully healthy, and I saw it towards the tail end of the season, certainly in that second UNLV game in the Mountain West Championship game, Ashton Genty fully healthy he's the best player in college football. And I love Travis Hunter. I live in the Denver area. My last coaching job was at the University of Colorado. But if you're in a big spot, there's nobody in college football today I would rather have than Ashton Genty fully healthy.
When we try to determine how close of a game that this is going to be, as Coach Mike Sanford is here with us, you look at the Oregon game. We saw Penn State just play Oregon in the Big 12 championship game or Big 10 championship game. For most of the contest, it felt like it was a 2-score game, and I know it ended up being Penn State losing by 8. As you said earlier in the season, Oregon went up against Boise State. I thought Boise State should have won the game when you look back at it, but they ended up losing by 3. When you look at where these teams are right now, Penn State getting better and better, Boise State having this incredible season, how big of a difference do you think both these teams are with Penn State being a heavy favorite in this one?
Well, I think a lot of confidence in Penn State, certainly in the Vegas lines, is predicated on the performance against SMU. And if you take away, it's a football game, so clearly these things that I'm going to mention are impactful in the turnout of a college football contest. If you take out some of the explosive plays and certainly some of the boneheaded turnovers by Kevin Jennings of SMU, that game is probably a little bit closer, as we know. And so I do think that Boise State as a team is not the type of team that turns the football over. But the reality of who Penn State is they're very talented in their fronts. They're really good. And so they have the opportunity in front of them against a team that will be outmatched. Boise State will be outmatched. I was at both media days. I saw Penn State getting off the bus and I saw Boise State getting off the bus, and you could tell which one was the Big Ten team and you could tell which one plays in the Mountain West Conference. But with that being said, Boise State's offensive line, I think, can stand up to the challenge. Boise State, their strength defensively is in their ability to stop the run. Ahmed Hassanin is a household name in Boise, Idaho, and my prediction is that he'll be a household name nationally after this game tomorrow night. I think that it's going to come down to who's going to make more mistakes. But this is going to be a tightly contested game. The only way that I see Boise State having the same fate that SMU did in terms of getting obliterated on the scoreboard is if there are more, I'd say if there are more than 2 turnovers by Boise State, this is going to be an uneven matchup.
Coach Mike Sanford here with us. All right, so we took care of Boise State and Penn State. Let's get to the games coming up on New Year's Day. We'll start with Arizona State and Texas. I love the chirping by Sam Levitt going into this one because that really reflects who Arizona State is with Kenny Dillingham. And then it was Quinn Ewers, coach, who basically, I felt like just said, yeah, I saw it. And, I take that personally, and we'll see what ends up happening coming up on Wednesday.
Yeah, I love the chirping from Levitt, the Arizona State quarterback, but I actually like the player even more. He's a player that, as the years progressed, I remembered him in the recruiting process when I was, evaluating quarterbacks nationally. But seeing where he has gone in this offense, and Marcus Arroyo has done a great job reinventing himself after the UNLV job didn't go great as a head man there. I really like Levitt, the player. I actually think that advantage Arizona State, in my opinion, in terms of quarterback play. Quinn Ewers played well in the first round game. I was impressed with what I saw. Some of those great traits of arm talent were on display. I just think that Quinn Ewers in big spots just hasn't consistently delivered and has turned the football over. And this being a neutral site game and not at the University of Texas in Austin, I think that this is going to be a lot closer of a game than people think. I actually predict that Arizona State and Boise State are going to be in one possession games in the fourth quarter, and it's going to make for great TV after what was a really rough first week for TV viewership.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up Ewers because all he's done has won at Texas and, actually bring Texas back. They won the Big 12 last year. We're in the SEC championship game this year in their inaugural season in the SEC. But when I watch him, I always have that, but I kind of want to just see this program with Sark and Arch Manning. So Quinn Ewers, he could shut a lot of people up, or it could be one of those situations where a lot of us end up being proven right after what we see on Wednesday.
Yeah, he's an awesome young man. He came in with a massive NIL deal. He had all the he's one of the early quarterbacks in this new space that we find ourselves in. And it's been disappointing because he was one of those Bino Cook back in the day talking about Ron Powless. He was like the guaranteed Heisman Trophy winner. And he hasn't delivered on that front, but he has been a really steadying presence for this Texas program that hasn't had any consistency over the last 2 decades, really a decade and a half. So I've been impressed with Quinn Ewers, and I love the athleticism of Arch Manning. What I don't want to see from Steve Sarkisian in this game, to be candid, is having Arch Manning on the sideline and then just throw him out there for a random quarterback sneak under center, because it looks like he's not very comfortable getting a snap coming off the sideline for one play. So it's going to be a fun contest to watch. Texas is so stinking good in their defensive front, one of the best, if not the best in college football this year. So that will provide, it's going to present some challenges for Arizona State, a very physical team themselves. Cam Scattaboo is also must-watch TV. I'm really excited to watch this matchup.
Coach Mike Sanford here with us. So Ohio State had a great performance up against Tennessee, the most impressive performance, I thought, in the first round of the college football playoff. Oregon, though, has been the best team all throughout the year. They beat Ohio State earlier in the season by 1 point, but Ohio State is the betting favorite in this one now on a neutral site at the granddaddy of them all in the Rose Bowl. Do you think that is an overreaction by Vegas off the Tennessee game, or are they right making Ohio State the favorite in this one?
of the 4 opening round games, Ohio State did the most for me. It was a team that I thought had some warts coming in just in terms of play calling. They looked like there were some confidence issues coming out of the Michigan loss, and just overall belief in Ryan Day and Chip Kelly to cut it loose and let Will Howard play. I thought Will Howard played arguably his best game. And if we see that same Will Howard against the Oregon Ducks in a neutral site game there in Pasadena, I think Ohio State not only wins that game, I think Ohio State is the odds-on favorite to win the whole tournament. And a lot of people are talking about the winner of the Rose Bowl is most likely going to end up winning the national championship. I believe that because I thought about 10, 15 days ago, if you would have asked me who's going to win this thing, I was sold on the Oregon Ducks because they were the team with the fewest warts. But I see now with an Ohio State team that's going to play certainly a lot more confidently. And if Will Howard can overcome some of his end of game woes, because this is going to be a tight game. This is going to come down to potentially the final possession. If Will Howard can overcome some of those, decision making and time management, what he did at Autzen Stadium in that first matchup was deplorable, to be honest, as a former quarterback coach myself. I think that this could be a very confident team and arguably the best roster, in college football.
And I could make the case. I think Quinn Ewers has a lot to gain this weekend. This week in these 4 games that are going to happen over the next 2 days. But I look at Dylan Gabriel too. We know that Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, whatever way, 1, 2, however you want to put 1, however you want to put 2, are going to be the first 2 quarterbacks taken. That third quarterback spot is really up for grabs. And last year, I know he didn't end up being the 3rd overall quarterback taken, but Bo Nix made that big rise, and no one would have ever thought 3 months before the draft that he would have been the 12th overall pick. If Dylan Gabriel, who played his best game of the season up against Ohio State early in the year, does that again and wins, I could see him end up being the 3rd best quarterback or the 3rd quarterback taken in this draft. How about yourself?
I could see that too. I mean, there's some measurables that do go against Dylan Gabriel. He's not obviously 6'3", 6'4". Quinn Ewers he fits more the traditional quarterback model, but you look at Kyler Murray, you look at Baker Mayfield, a lot of these players in the National Football League that are having a semblance of success. I know Kyler Murray's probably not a great one to bring up right now, but I think that Dylan Gabriel, as the season progressed, as he got more comfortable in Will Stein's offensive system, you started to see some of those wow traits that you saw when he was at Oklahoma, when he was at UCF, and I'm excited to watch him play. I really enjoyed his Big Ten championship performance. I thought that was as well as I've seen him play in terms of really cutting it loose and showing all those skill sets that he does have. Dylan Gabriel is a fun player to watch. He's gritty, he's tough, he makes things happen off schedule. So you're right. I in terms of me and what I evaluate and what I like in the quarterback position, I would put Dylan Gabriel as a slight favorite as the 3rd quarterback drafted over Quinn Ewers, unless Quinn Ewers, like you said, does really capitalize on this postseason and puts more great tape, in high leverage situations out there.
Do you give the edge? I think it's so close. I personally go slightly Shedeur over Cam. Are you in that same boat, or do you like Cam over Shedeur?
Well, I almost sometimes, this is a really random thought as it relates particularly to the New York Giants. I know Drew Lock ruined a lot of plans yesterday. He did a great job having one of the top quarterback performances in the history of the NFL in exactly the wrong time. So you got to put away your backpack sellies. You got to get that Drew Lock backpack celebration, because I don't think he's going to be the franchise quarterback for the New York Giants.
Hot take.
In fact, I think that you're going to end up having the franchise quarterback, and the draft pick for the New York Giants, and hear me out on this one, is going to be the apple of their eye from last year. And it's going to end up being a trade to acquire JJ McCarthy. And that's how I see this thing going for the Giants franchise. I know the Mara family loved JJ McCarthy in the evaluation process, but Malik Neighbors was just sitting there, and you got to take a franchise altering talent at the receiver position. It wouldn't surprise me to see JJ there. I think that the Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward discussions can be really fun to analyze, to break down, to follow as we get closer to draft day, because I think it's going to be more about preference and what you want. I still think that Shedeur Sanders somehow, some way is going to be the starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. I just see the franchise fit. I see the need for entertainment, in a Raiders franchise that spent a ton of money on their building and just hasn't really captured the attention and the passion of the local fan base there in Las Vegas. I just think he's the perfect quarterback for that franchise, and I just can't unsee it.
Let me just follow then up here with your J.J. McCarthy take. Do you think J.J. could be better than either Shedeur or Cam Ward?
I love J.J. McCarthy. I was a detractor. I thought watching his film at Michigan, I felt like he was a great system fit. They ran the ball well. And I just didn't see a ton of just pure arm talent on his film at Michigan, which is strange because I go to the combine, I'm sitting in the front row, I'm watching him right in front of Bo Nix, and I was just blown away with his arm talent at the combine. And I was like, well, unbelievable character. He's a proven winner. He's a great athlete. He can extend plays. And he's got great arm talent. So, yeah, I think he checks a whole heck of a lot of boxes, not to mention that he got to go into the best situation, clearly, with the quarterback guru of all quarterback gurus, Kevin O'Connell, to sit back and learn, watching Sam Darnold reinvent himself as a quarterback in the NFL. And Sam Darnold is a bona fide top 6 quarterback today in the National Football League, which I never would have said a year or two ago.
All righty, let me get your thoughts. One more college football playoff game that we got to break down with Coach Mike Sanford. I look at Georgia and Notre Dame. I've been on this network, I think, since 2018. I have never picked Notre Dame in a big game. I think it's different this year. I like Notre Dame up against Georgia, and I still don't know, even though he played okay in the second half of the SEC championship game, considering the circumstances, I don't know what to expect out of Gunnar Stockton. Where are you at between the Irish and the Bulldogs?
Well, the biggest X factor is exactly what you mentioned, Gunnar Stockton. And I had the smell test on Gunnar Stockton for me was such that I think the dude is an absolute baller. And I think he's a dog. And I think he's just been sitting there waiting in the wings. And I think it's one of those things that probably internally that team knows that this guy's got something to him, something special about him. So he is the great X factor. If he doesn't perform at a high level, I have Notre Dame winning in this spot. But the great X factor in this game and why I think it's going to be must-see TV is because I think Gunnar Stockton has this just innate ability to win football games, and he did it in his real first opportunity to do it. It was so fun to watch him play and showing the toughness, the athleticism, crazy arm talent that he threw, some of those sideline out passes that he made. I'm really excited for this matchup. If I were a betting man, I would take Gunnar Stockton and the Georgia Bulldogs, because I just think this kid has the X factor. It's like Stetson Bennett, but with real talent.
How about that? Coach Mike Sanford, we appreciate the time. Happy New Year. Enjoy all the games, all right?
You too. Appreciate you having me on, Zach.
There you go. Mike Sanford with us on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Always love when we get to bring him on. Okay, we'll take a timeout. We'll come on back. When we do return, should the Eagles play Saquon Barkley in Week 18, going for the Eric Dickerson record, and also the Commanders are going to the playoffs. Back with more after these short messages.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
This is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
That's what I'm talking about. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. If you look at the history of the NFL, Saquon Barkley joined the 2,000-yard club yesterday, 2,000 rushing yards in a season. He has 2,005 on the year. The other running backs that have had over 2,000 yards, O.J. Simpson back in 73 had 2,003 yards. That's ninth most. Saquon yesterday, now eighth most. Chris Johnson in 2009 had 2,006 yards. You also had Terrell Davis in 98, 2,008 yards. Derrick Henry in that great season in 2020, 2,027 yards. 1997, Barry Sanders, 2,053 yards. Jamal Lewis in 2003 had 2,066 yards. Adrian Peterson, 2,097 yards in 2012. And then Eric Dickerson, the all-time leader, most rushing yards in a season, had 2,105 yards. Now, I see some people say, hey, if Barkley did it because they play in one more game, it doesn't mean as much as what Eric Dickerson did. So here's the one thing that I will say to dispute that. Attempts. I would say attempts matter more than the actual games. Eric Dickerson had 379 attempts. Adrian Peterson, 348. Jamal Lewis, 387. Barry Sanders, 335. Derrick Henry, 378. Terrell Davis, 392. Chris Johnson, 358. Saquon Barkley, 345. And O.J. Simpson, 332. So if Saquon Barkley gets this record, right now he currently has 345 yards, 345 attempts, and Eric Dickerson has 379 attempts. So I think the attempts are more important than the games actually played. That's just my personal opinion. But the bigger conversation here is going to be, should the Eagles go for this record? And I could understand why you would say, hey, don't do it. You don't get a second bye now. There's only one team that gets a bye in each conference, and the Eagles are locked into that 2 seed. So get your bye this week, and then everyone could have fresh legs for the first round of the playoffs in the wild card round. And if that's a decision that the Eagles make, fine. No problem with it. Now, I do remember a game early in the year. I think it was up against the Giants. I think it was most rushing yards for an Eagles running back ever in a single game. I think that is what it was. Or it would have been maybe his own career high. It could have been his career high, something like that. And there was a clip, I remember seeing it, of Nick Sirianni going over. He's like, hey, do we want you to get you back in so you can get your record? And he's like, nope, let the other guys eat. Let the other guys get the opportunity. So I don't know if Saquon Barkley is going to want to go for this record. And I think Saquon plays a major role in this. Now, if Saquon wants to go for it and the Eagles don't want him to, then you could get a little bit of a contentious situation. But Saquon Barkley, here's what I love about him. For a player that is that big of a star, he really, I don't want to say he has no ego, but he does seem like he's the consummate professional and one of those ultimate teammate guys. So I look at this decision the Eagles have. Selfishly, I want to see him go for the record. Right? This has been one of those records that if you follow football, and individual records aren't usually that big of an accomplishment in football. We don't usually track them, but this is one of them with Eric Dickerson. And maybe just because of my lifetime, right, we've seen Adrian Peterson try to get it. We've seen Jamal Lewis try to get it. We've seen Derrick Henry try to get it. We've seen Chris Johnson try to get it. And this has been a big part of the conversation this year for Saquon Barkley. Even if Saquon does get it, I don't think he's going to win the MVP. The MVP is either going to Lamar Jackson or it's going to Josh Allen. And if somehow the Bengals make the playoffs, I do think there's going to be a big push for Joe Burrow. But I really do believe the MVP is going to end up going to Josh Allen this year. And if it's not Josh Allen, I would say Lamar Jackson. So it's not like, hey, if Saquon gets this record, he's going to win the MVP. Maybe he'll get more MVP first place votes, but he's not going to win the MVP because of the fact that he got this record. But with how close you are and how in reach you are of getting this record, and you could do it in fewer attempts, he could get this record in a half. He really could. With the way he breaks out one big run, it's a possibility that Saquon Barkley could get this record for a half. So that's the way that I think you approach it, where I think you just kind of go into this with kind of the approach of, hey, we'll play a half, we'll see where we are, and then we'll reevaluate it. Kind of treat it as if it's that tune-up for the regular season and the most important preseason game of the year, back when people would actually play in the preseason. So my personal preference, because I'm going to be selfish here, is, and there's not a lot of games in Week 18 that mean a lot. If we're just being honest, you look at pretty much the seeding. You have one spot left in the AFC that's up for grabs. I know you still have to figure out who's going to win the AFC North, but you already know that when you look at the playoff picture, the Chiefs are locked into the 1 seed. The Bills are a playoff team. The Ravens are a playoff team. The Texans are a playoff team. The Steelers are a playoff team. And the Chargers are a playoff team. And you still have the Broncos, the Dolphins, the Bengals, available and competing for that spot, for that final 7th spot or the final playoff spot in the AFC. And in the NFC, the Vikings are in. Vikings and Lions, right? They have to play this weekend, and that will determine who gets the 1 and who gets the 5. The Eagles are locked in at the 2. The Rams already won their division. The NFC South is still up for grabs. The Commanders are now in the postseason, and the Packers are in the postseason as well. So there's no wild card spots up for grabs. It's just going to be who's going to end up winning the NFC South. Will it be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or will it be the Atlanta Falcons? So there's really not a ton on the line. Yeah, sure, the AFC North is on the line. Yeah, the final AFC wildcard spot is on the line. The 1 seed in the NFC is on the line. And you have draft positioning too, with some of what happened yesterday, the Giants surprisingly winning, the Patriots now the number 1 pick. Hey, I want the Bills. I think they're going to rest their guys and probably use that as a bye week because they don't have a bye this year. And I would just say, hey, I hope the Bills beat the Patriots because I want my football team to get the number 1 overall pick and then try to use all these other teams to then trade back a few spots and then get a bunch of future draft capital moving forward. But with not a lot on the line from previous years, when you look at this Week 18 in the NFL, I would be intrigued to actually watch, the Eagles' final game of the season up against the Giants too, which can you imagine Saquon breaking this record up against the Giants? Oh, I would feel bad for John Mara. I would advise John Mara to not go to this game. At least it's in Philadelphia. It's not at MetLife Stadium because that would turn into VetLife Stadium with how many Eagles fans would go. But I would like to see the Eagles let Saquon go for this. And you don't have to do everything. You have to go all out. And I get it. Hey, if he gets hurt, everyone will be calling all the Eagles the worst names in the world. And I would understand that. But it would be disingenuous for me to say, oh, the Eagles made a terrible decision. The Eagles made this horrific mistake because of the fact that I'm sitting here and saying that they should let him go for the record. There's not a lot of NFL records that I care about in a team sport, a true team sport like the NFL. But this is just one of them that I know of and one of them that just resonates with me. And I don't know, maybe it's a little bit because Eric Dickerson has also said that he doesn't want to see his record be broken. So I'm like, all right, let's go, Saquon. Go for the record. But what a wonderful season this has been for Saquon Barkley either way. And it's going to be one of those storylines throughout the week on if the Eagles are going to allow him to go chase and pursue that record. I did read somewhere, I think it was from Lane Johnson, that he was like, hey, I looked at 2,000 yards as us doing our job, so I hope we kind of get the next week off. Right? That was our goal, get Saquon 2,000 yards. But when you're this close and Eric Dickerson's at 2,105 yards and Saquon's at 2,005 yards, it's like, man, that's right there. That'd be pretty badass if he could get it. Ultimately, if the Eagles don't win the Super Bowl this year, it's a failed season for the Eagles, but you look at Saquon Barkley for what this could do, and this is another reason too. I want to see him get it because of what the running back position has been talked about and the way it's been talked about the last few years. If Saquon gets this record, it just puts a cherry on top of the sundae for the running back position, the individual at the running back position making a return. Because, yes, in the last decade, bell cow backs really don't win championships. If you want to include Marshawn Lynch, okay, that's one. But when you look at teams like the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Eagles, even when they won, the Rams, it was running back by committee. And the running back market took a big hit the last few years. And look at what Derrick Henry's been able to do with the Ravens this year and what Saquon Barkley's been able to do with the Philadelphia Eagles this year. So it would just be like another cool thing to see in this year and this transformation of the way that we view the running back position if Saquon could go get it. So I'd understand it either way. If I was making the decision, I would say, Saquon, let's have you run loose for the first half, then reevaluate where we are at halftime. But I feel pretty damn good at getting us in a good enough number of area of reach where we could then let you play for the third quarter if you even need that. But if he breaks off 2 big runs in the first half, he may get it in the first half, especially, hey, the Giants. I know their players are going to be trying to win. Organizations tank, players don't. But after the Giants just gave their best effort of the season, in terms of what their offense is able to do, just the organization as a whole, I know Saquon's going up against defense. Are they going to be able to put up another good effort? Can you imagine in terms of draft picks? The Giants were the number 1 pick entering last weekend. Now they're down to 4. Can you imagine if they win this week? And as bad of a season that this is, they're like picking 8th, 9th, or 10th. It's what the Raiders have done. Stu called it. I'll give Stu credit, Stu Kovacs. A few weeks ago, he goes, I'm not happy yet. There's some winnable games, and I could see the Raiders winning some games, and the Raiders won the last 2 weeks. And they go from picking either 1 or 2 to now 8. But this is shaping up well for my football team. My football team, the Patriots, could just lose next week. They lose next week, they get the number 1 overall pick. Hey, Tennessee. Hey, Cleveland. Hey, the Giants. Hello, the Raiders. We're open for business. Open for business. We'll trade down a few spots. We'll get a future first-round pick or 2, whatever. You go get your quarterback, and we go get someone to go help out Drake May. That'd be fun. I would like that. Alrighty, should the Eagles play Saquon Barkley to go for the Eric Dickerson record this Week 18 with nothing really on the line for them, with them locked into the 2 spot? 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll do a little onside, offside, as Nico's got some questions for me. But update time first. Here he is, Pete McCarthy.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
All right, Zach, one of the eagerly anticipated NFL matchups coming into the season has turned into kind of a dud. The Lions last year blew a 17-point halftime lead to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. A rematch tonight is head coach Dan Campbell seeking revenge.
I think that experience, as difficult as it was, served us well moving forward into this year. And it's like anything else. You just, you don't like to lose.
Well, Campbell may not like to lose, but it won't cost the Lions much if they do. The only difference would be when they take on the Vikings next week. That game ends in a tie. The Vikings would be the number 1 seed rather than the Lions. Otherwise, it's winner takes all next Sunday night. The 49ers, of course, out of playoff contention. Rex Ryan and Ron Rivera will reportedly interview for the Jets head coaching job. At the Music City Bowl, Iowa is leading number 19 Missouri 21-14 early on in the second half. And 6 former Florida State basketball players are suing head men's basketball coach Leonard Hamilton. They allege he failed to make good on a promise to get each of them $250,000 in NIL compensation. I'm Pete McCarthy.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb.
All right, it is onside, offside time right here on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Let's start things off today. Nico Kudavidas, Iamaliava, Scarlatos. A lot of syllables in your name, but let's get it going right now. A little onside, offside. What do you got cooking for me?
All right, we heard in college football there will be in-depth discussions about not guaranteeing conference champions top 4 college football playoff seeds in 2025. The top 5 conference champs would still get in, but rankings would determine the seeds. So onside, offside, the top 4 highest-ranked conference champions should get a guaranteed first-round bye.
So I think I should be the commissioner of college football. Forget Nick Saban for a second. It should be me. Because when we found out what the format was going to be, when it was a 12-team format, the 4 highest-ranked conference champions would get a bye after we saw the Pac-12 basically just go away. I said to myself, I don't like how the 4 highest-ranked conference champions automatically get a bye, and then whoever is the 5th spot, because people thought the 5th spot was just going to be a G5 team, would be able to be ranked anywhere. That never made any sense to me. I think you should just, if you win your conference, right, you win the Big 12, you win the ACC, you win the Big 10, you win the SEC, and then whoever is the highest ranked non-Power 4 conference champion, you just get an automatic spot in the playoff. But I think the ranking should still matter in terms of if you are a Penn State and you lose in the Big Ten championship game, but you're ranked higher than, I don't know, Arizona State, you should be able to get a bye over the Sun Devils. So I never liked the fact that the 4 highest-ranked conference champions get a bye. So when you ask me the top 4 highest-ranked conference champions should be guaranteed a first-round bye, I'm going to go offside on that one.
Offside.
Number 2.
Boise State and Arizona State both entered the college football playoff quarterfinals as double-digit underdogs. The Broncos are looking for its first 13-win season since 2006, while the Sun Devils are trying to become just the second Big 12 team to ever win a CFP game, the only other being TCU in 2022 when they beat Michigan. Onside, offsides, at least one of these teams will pull off a major upset and advance to the semifinals.
So I said it when the bracket came out that I didn't know who, but one of Arizona State or Boise State were going to pull off the upset, whoever they were going to play. I did put in a bet yesterday. I made a little parlay. I took Notre Dame with the points, and I also took Boise State with the points. So I think Boise State's going to cover. For most of last week, I was like, I'm liking Texas more and more and more and more and more and more. But I don't know if I can lay that number 13.5 with Texas. So there's a difference in saying, hey, Arizona State and Boise State's going to cover, and then they're going to win the game. I'm still going Boise State's going to upset Penn State, and that game's going to be close. And in the big moment, James Franklin and Drew Aller won't be able to get the job done. So when you ask me at least one of these teams will pull off a major upset and advance to the semifinals, I'm going to say yes. I will go on sides on that one. Next question.
I hope Hickey's not listening out there in the newsroom.
Well, we actually made a bet.
Oh, really?
He thinks Penn State is going to the national championship game. So if Penn State makes the national championship game, I will have to do the show dressed up as a Nittany Lion. Whoever Penn State loses to, though, if they don't get to the national championship game, so if it is Boise State, he has to dress up as a Boise State Bronco, and then Penn State would get the winner of Georgia Notre Dame. So from a content perspective, it actually would maybe be better if Penn State wins this game, and then he has to either dress up as a bulldog or a leprechaun. Because Hickey as a leprechaun would be funny, and then Hickey as a bulldog, man, it would be the most pathetic-looking bulldog ever. It would not be an intimidating bulldog. It would be a sad bulldog. But anyway, what do you got cooking for me on the next question?
All right, well, speaking of the Bulldogs, they're trying to win their third national title in 4 years, but they'll be without their starting quarterback, Carson Beck, for the rest of the season. Beck led Georgia to another SEC championship game berth, but had some shaky performances along the way. Backup Gunnar Stockton filled in during the SEC chip and helped Georgia come back to beat Texas 22-19 in overtime. Onside, offside, Georgia's actually better off with Stockton at quarterback than they would be with Beck.
So I think this is going to be, a lot of people are going to hear this and say, that's a funky answer. But I'm going to say onside. I don't know if there's been a bigger critic of Carson Beck this year than me. And it's not because I'm rooting against him. It's just I've been so disappointed where the hype was with Carson Beck. And all his best in recovery, and now he's off to the NFL. I would have came back for another season of college football, quite frankly, if I was Carson Beck, but I saw he declared for the draft the other day. But I was told he was supposed to be all the way up here. And I never saw that all the way up here play consistently or really all that frequently this year with Carson Beck. So even though there's a great unknown of what Gunnar Stockton is, that team believes in him. That team, you saw the fire that he brought to them in the second half of that SEC championship game, even though he wasn't great statistically. And we had Dan Jackson on the other week, and he talked about how much of a dog Gunnar Stockton is. So I think up against Notre Dame, it is actually better for Georgia to have Gunnar Stockton at QB than they would have been with Carson Beck. So I would go onside. Next question.
All right. The first time Ohio State and Oregon played earlier this season. Oregon.
You got to go Oregon.
Tomato.
No, it's not. I've had a lot of friends that grew up in Oregon, and they made it clear when I used to say Oregon, they're like, you sound like an idiot. It's Oregon, so get it right.
All right, well, Oregon.
Or else we'll find somebody else to fill in as a producer on this show.
Oregon barely survived for a 32-31 home win, leaving most saying that the Buckeyes should be considered the better team in a matchup on a neutral site. Ryan Day's squad enters this quarterfinal game as a 2.5-point favorite against the undefeated Ducks. Onside, offside, Ohio State should be favored over Oregon in this game.
Now, just refresh my memory here, even though you may have just said it. Oregon beat Ohio State earlier this year by 1 point, correct?
Correct.
Ohio State lost to Michigan this year, correct?
Correct.
Oregon lost to who this year?
Nobody.
So Oregon's been the most consistent and best team in the sport, and they're not a favorite because Ohio State smothered Tennessee while Oregon was enjoying a bye because of their hard work that they put into this season. Ohio State should not be favored in this game. They could win the game, but Oregon should be the favorite in this one, especially when they beat them earlier in the year. And I know people say, oh, they only beat them by 1 point, and it was in Autzen. Like, I don't care. Oregon should be the favorite in this one. So when you ask me, should the Buckeyes be favored over Oregon in this game, I am going offside.
Offside.
Next question.
All right, we'll switch over to the NFL. After winning just 5 games in 2023, Jim Harbaugh has completely turned the Chargers around in just year 1 of his tenure, thanks to a 10-win season and a spot in the NFL playoffs. The other side of the story, though, sees the Bolts with just a 2-5 record against teams that are currently above 500 this season. Onside, offside, the Chargers are good enough to make the AFC Championship game.
I think the Chargers could win a game in the postseason. I don't think they have enough talent on the offensive side of the ball in the skill position department to end up getting 2 wins. I don't think they could win the wild card round and then also win the divisional round because, like you said, they have not beat those elite teams this year. It's weird to compare him to the Green Bay Packers because the Packers were already a step ahead from what they did last year, and they weren't able to elevate. And this is the Chargers elevating in year one from being a non-playoff team to a playoff team. But in terms of how the Packers really haven't beat anybody, the same could kind of be said for the Chargers as well. So I don't think the Chargers, they could survive wild card weekend, but then to beat whoever remains in the divisional round, I don't think so. So to say that the Chargers are good enough to make the AFC Championship game, I would politely, even though I love Jim Harbaugh, and I'm excited to see what they do this offseason, I would say offside on that one.
Offside.
All right, last one. Saquon Barkley's having one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a running back and is just 100 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season record, which was set in 1984. The last time a non-quarterback won the MVP award was Adrian Peterson way back in 2012. Onside, offside, Saquon Barkley deserves more respect in the MVP debate.
No, I think he got his appropriate respect. There was that game. It was the Pittsburgh game where he didn't play at an MVP level, and you saw them go through the year with Jalen Hurts. Now, if you're getting technical and you want to get real nitpicky, that's one reason why I think that's when the full momentum for Saquon to lose the award kind of went right out of the building and left the building, that whatever air was in that balloon went right out the window. I think he's got the proper respect. Everyone said he's having a sensational season. He's in consideration for the MVP. He'll be a finalist. But should he win the award over Josh Allen? No. Should he win the award over Lamar Jackson? No. And it's because of just how dominant that team is with all the talent that they have, that just naturally there's going to be weeks where other guys are going to eat on that team, where it's crazy that he's been able to get this many yards when he plays on a team with A.J. Brown. He plays on a team with Devontae Smith. You have Jalen Hurts when healthy at the quarterback position. So I don't think he needs more respect in the MVP debate. I think he's got the appropriate amount of respect where he's going to be a finalist, but he won't win the award. So I will go offside on that question.
Offside.
All righty, that will do it for Onside Offside on the Zach Gelb Show on this Monday edition. We will take a timeout. When we come on back, Zach Taylor says there's no player he'd rather have in the NFL than Joe Burrow. He believes Joe Burrow is the best player pound for pound in the NFL. We've had some incredible quarterback play this year with Joe Burrow, even though his team may not make the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes, even though this hasn't been his best statistical season, the Chiefs only lost one game. We see what Lamar Jackson's doing. We've seen what Josh Allen has done. Sam Darnold's been really fun to watch. Baker Mayfield's been really fun to watch. Jared Goff has been really fun to watch. So who is the best player in the NFL? And let's say if everyone thinks it's Mahomes, who's the second best player in the NFL? It's a great conversation. We'll get to it next. 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. You can always follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
All righty, away we go. Hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So here's where we're at headed into Week 18 of the NFL season in the AFC. We know the Chiefs are locked into the 1. The Buffalo Bills are your 2 seed. The AFC North is still up for grabs with the Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The AFC South has already been won by the Houston Texans. Whoever wins the AFC North, you will still see whoever loses it, either the Ravens or the Steelers, they'll both make the playoffs. The Chargers are locked in as a wild card team, being 10-6, but you got 3 teams and 1 spot still to go. And it's the Broncos, it's the Dolphins, and it's the Bengals. The Broncos had a chance to clinch up against the Cincinnati Bengals. They couldn't get the job done. They lost that game 30-24, which was a crazy game back in overtime on Saturday evening. Now, if the Bengals want to make the playoffs, here's what they're going to need to have happen. They're going to need the Broncos to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't think the Chiefs, I would imagine they're not going to play anyone in Week 18. Now, do you want to get your guys 2 weeks off because you do have the bye? That's a question. I do believe a lot of these teams that are locked into their spots that are going to have to play Wild Card Weekend, they're going to try to get the bye this week. So that's the reverse kind of part of it. What about the team with the bye, with the Chiefs? Do they want their guys to be off for 2 weeks? I don't think the Chiefs, that they're going to get screwed by the extra rest. So I would expect Kansas City to probably play no one. And if that's the case, unless if Carson Wentz has this crazy moment and the Broncos do the ultimate gag job, then there's a way for the door to be open. But I would expect, right, the Broncos to win, the Broncos to get to 10-7, and the Broncos to be off to the postseason. But if the Broncos do lose then to the Kansas City Chiefs, that then opens up the door for the Dolphins and the Bengals to get in. Now, the Dolphins would need the Broncos to lose, and then the Dolphins would have to beat the New York Jets. The Jets quit on their season, I don't know, about 8 weeks ago. And then, if the Bengals want to get in, they're going to need not only the Broncos to lose, they're going to then need the Dolphins to lose to the Jets, and then the Cincinnati Bengals will have to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's very unlikely that the Bengals get into the postseason, because I do believe the likeliest option is that the Denver Broncos, they take care of business up against Kansas City with nothing to play for, and then the Broncos are in the postseason. And if that's the case, you have Kansas City, Buffalo, the Ravens, the Texans, the Steelers, the Chargers, and the Broncos as your 7 teams. In the NFC, Vikings and Lions are both already in. The winner of that Sunday Night Football contest will get the 1 seed. The loser will fall all the way off to 5. The Eagles are locked in as your 2. The Rams are in the postseason as the NFC West champions. The Buccaneers, they win, they're in, and they'll win the NFC South. We know the Commanders already have a wild card spot, and the Packers already have a wild card spot. So the only thing up left for grabs is, will the Buccaneers, in terms of who makes the postseason or not in terms of seeding, will the Buccaneers get in, or will it be the Atlanta Falcons? And by the way, what a terrible, and I mean a terrible coaching job by Raheem Morris. And you know what? The Falcons get what they deserve, because they should have hired Bill Belichick this offseason. And I'm not saying Raheem Morris wasn't deserving of another opportunity, because he was deserving of another opportunity to be a head coach. But when you have Bill Belichick and your owner and Arthur Blank, who's only getting older, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl, I'm not saying Bill would have won a Super Bowl with the Atlanta Falcons. But how do you not take that swing when you wanted to take that swing? Because you let other voices in your organization persuade you to not hire Bill Belichick. But what I saw in that Falcons and Commanders game, the Falcons were given a 10-point lead at halftime, and they blew it. And then at the end of the first half, Raheem Morris didn't know what to do with his timeouts. And then at the end of the second half, he still didn't know what to do with his timeouts. So you have a coach that blew a 10-point lead. Michael Penix played a really good game. I was impressed with Michael Penix Jr. And also you had a coach that 2 different times in the game had no clue what to do with his timeouts, just letting the clock tick, 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 and tick away. And you could have had Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest coach of all time. And the Falcons controlled their own destiny going into the weekend after the Bucs lost last week to the Dallas Cowboys, and after Tampa Bay just embarrassed the Panthers yesterday. And the Falcons had a good moment and then a bad moment, and now they don't control their own destiny anymore. In all likelihood, the Falcons are going to be on the outside looking in. And think about it. That's back-to-back years. The Saints last year were supposed to be the team in that division. This year, it was supposed to be the Falcons, the team in that division. And Baker Mayfield, if he gets the job done coming up this weekend, up against the Saints, who have nothing to play for, then that will be back-to-back years Baker Mayfield puts the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the postseason. And think about that, how great Baker Mayfield has been. And he's so fun to watch. He's such a gamer. He has such moxie. He plays with such guts and passion. I love watching Baker Mayfield. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch in the NFL. You know, it's so bizarre. This year, if you ask me, Zach, who are some of your favorite players to watch in the NFL? Like, it's easy for me to go with the big names, right? A Mahomes or a Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. And I love watching all those guys. But I love watching Baker Mayfield. You know, I love watching him play the quarterback position. This year, I love watching Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. This year, I love watching Puka Nacua of the LA Rams. I've loved watching Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, TJ Watt on the defensive side of the ball. It's usually always just quarterback. But if you would have told me, Zach, before the year started, one of your favorite players to watch this year was Baker Mayfield, I'd be like, what? I wouldn't have believed that. But Baker has done a phenomenal job after his career was donezo. The Browns gave up on him. He won the Browns a playoff game. They gave up on him to go for Deshaun Watson. Then Baker Mayfield's in Carolina. He's with the Rams, and he lands up in Tampa Bay, wins a playoff game last year, and now is 60 minutes away from going back to the postseason. And I don't think the Bucs could go win a Super Bowl this year, but they'll be a pain-in-the-ass team to play because Baker Mayfield's not going to go down without giving you every single thing that he's got. So I enjoy watching Baker Mayfield. But I'm not going to sit there and argue that Baker Mayfield's one of the best players in the NFL. I won't do that. So you look at really the breakdown of the AFC, the NFC this year. We know the 6 teams that are already in the AFC. Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Texans, Steelers, Chargers. There's one spot still up for grabs in the AFC. In the NFC, we know the Vikings, Eagles, Rams, Lions, Commanders, and Packers are already in. And the last spot up for grab is the NFC South. Think about how much deeper the NFC is this year than the AFC. It's wild. I get it. The Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens are really good. But the Texans don't scare me. The Steelers don't scare me. The Chargers don't scare me. The Broncos get in. They don't scare me. You look at the NFC, the Vikings could be the 1 seed or they could be the 5 seed. The Lions could be the 1 seed. They could be the 5 seed. Both of those teams right now, Minnesota's 14-2. The Lions play tonight, and they're 13-2. The Eagles have 13 wins. They could finish with 14 wins. They're locked in as the 2 seed. The Rams, I think, are extremely dangerous. They just needed to get in after that terrible start. They're in. Now you got Stafford. You got Kupp. You got Kyron Williams, who I love watching as well. You got Puka Nacua. You got Braden Fisk. You got Jared Verse. That's a good Rams team. Tampa Bay is going to be a tough out. The Commanders are a fun watch with Jaden Daniels. I know the Packers haven't taken that next step this year, but they still won 11 games. Look how deep the NFC has become. Going into this year was the AFC. So much better than the NFC. The NFC's not only closed the gap, I think the NFC has been the better conference this year. I think it's been the more enjoyable conference to watch this year when you take a look and you've been watching football this season. So anyway, let me play you this clip because the Bengals are still somehow alive, even after the kicker York missed the kick, and T. Higgins, the price just went up for him, cha-ching, and he had 3 touchdowns, and the Bengals still have a chance to get into the postseason, which is crazy. And the Bengals finally beat a good team this year on Saturday night. Up until then, here were the Bengals' victories. The Panthers, the Giants, the Browns, the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Titans, the Browns again, and they finally beat a good team in the Denver Broncos. They were good, not great. And they play the Steelers this upcoming weekend. But we'll see if the Bengals can get into the postseason, as they're going to need the Broncos to lose and they're going to need the Dolphins to lose. And how fun would that be if the Bengals get in? They don't deserve to go. But with Burrow, with Chase, with Higgins, Hendrickson, I know that defense has been god-awful. But imagine Burrow and just the aura around him if they're able to get in. But after that contest up against the Denver Broncos, Zach Taylor went to the podium. His quarterback, by the way, on the season, and it's criminal that they're probably not going to make the playoffs. He has 4,641 passing yards and 42 touchdowns. If I would have told you before the year that Joe Burrow would have 4,641 passing yards and 42 touchdowns, you'd probably say 2 things to me. Number 1, the Bengals are probably the number 1 seed in the AFC. And then number 2, Joe Burrow is going to win his first NFL MVP. And in all likelihood, the Bengals aren't going to make the playoffs. And Joe Burrow, the only way he has a chance to put himself in the MVP conversation is if they do make the playoffs. And what I just said with the first part, I don't think they're going to make the postseason. So it's wild how the Bengals have found a way to put themselves in a position, in all likelihood, to not make the postseason. And if they could have just won one of those games up against the Ravens, where they should have won both, but if they could have just won once against the Ravens, man, it's a totally different conversation. But here is Zach Taylor after the win up against the Broncos saying Joe Burrow is the best player in the world right now.
I don't know that anybody can stand on a field and watch Joe Burrow and say he's not the best player in the world, and then you can transfer that argument to Jamar Chase as well, and you can argue those two to death. But the clearest thing I can say is I would not trade Joe Burrow for any player in the universe. And so, to me, that's MVP to me.
So it's nice of him to say, and he has an MVP quality season, but I still think Josh Allen is the MVP for this reason. When you look at the Bengals, who do the Bengals have? They got Jamar Chase, they got T. Higgins. When you look at the Baltimore Ravens, who's their next piece next to Lamar Jackson? Derrick Henry, who's having an unbelievable season. You look at the Bills, yeah, James Cook's been a touchdown machine this year, but who doesn't belong there? And I like James Cook a lot. I name you these 4 players: Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, James Cook, and Derrick Henry. Who doesn't belong? It's James Cook. That's why Josh Allen's going to win the MVP this year. Because the Bills are just as good as the Ravens. The Bills are a team that has exceeded expectations this year. They're the number 2 seed in the AFC. And if it's between really Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and even if you throw Joe Burrow in there, it may not even make the playoffs, Josh Allen's doing more with less. And that's why I think in terms of value, he's the most valuable player in the NFL this year. Now, with that being said, is he the best player on the planet? You can make the case for Josh Allen, right? You can make the case for Lamar Jackson. You can make the case for Joe Burrow, and you can make the case for Patrick Mahomes. Those are the 4 best quarterbacks in football. Quarterback is the most important position not only in the NFL, but in all sports. So to be the best player in football, you got to be a quarterback, in my opinion. You know, are there years where a defensive player could be at like an Aaron Donald? Yes. You know, when he was playing. You know, a TJ Watt, a Myles Garrett. You know, Saquon, if you want to throw him in the fold. Derrick Henry some years. Yes. You know, Tyreek Hill was voted number 1 on that top 100 list for last year. But if I'm saying the 4 best players on the planet in the NFL, in some order, it's Mahomes, it's Burrow, it's Allen, it's Lamar Jackson. And what does one guy have, even though he's not having his best statistical season, that the other 3 don't? Well, Patrick Mahomes has not only a ring, but 3 rings. So as much as I love Lamar Jackson, 2 MVPs, hasn't got to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow has defeated Patrick Mahomes in an AFC Championship game and got to a Super Bowl, but lost. Josh Allen, farthest he's ever made, has been the AFC Championship game. So the best player in the NFL, even though the stats may not say so this year, and he's not having a prodigious passing season, it's still Patrick Mahomes. He's the most feared player in the NFL. He's also the best player in the NFL. But if you maybe pick a quarterback, and let's word it this way. If you maybe pick a quarterback for the next 5 years, that's not Mahomes. Would it be Burrow, would it be Allen, or would it be Lamar Jackson? Nico, I'll throw that to you, and then I'll give you my answer. Take Mahomes out of it. Next 5 years, you could have Lamar, Joe Burrow, or Josh Allen. Who would you end up picking?
I got to go with Lamar.
Okay. Azarm, who would you take then?
I agree.
You would both go with Lamar Jackson. I'm actually going to go with Josh Allen, and here's why. You're splitting hairs between all 3 of those quarterbacks. And Joe Burrow's had the most postseason success. Lamar's had the most individual success. So you may say, Zach, why are you throwing Josh Allen in there? Injuries. That's why. Like, if I'm looking for something, the wear and tear on Lamar's body, even though Lamar does a good job avoiding taking hits, but he's had 2 injuries at the end of the year, he's not on the field. Joe Burrow had 2 seasons where he's not there at the end of the year. Josh Allen gets dinged up, but he never misses a long stretch of time. And that's why, to me, if I had to pick one out of those 3, I think the best quarterback between the 3 is actually Burrow, when you put all things in consideration. But from a health standpoint, for 5 years, I would trust Josh Allen over Lamar and Josh Allen over Joe Burrow. So that's the way that I'll answer that one. All righty, we'll take a timeout. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will return with a little no-huddle offense.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Touchdowns, sacks, showdowns, upsets, and last-minute heroics. Another NFL Sunday is in the books, and we've got you covered with the biggest plays and sound bites from another wild week in the National Football League. It's time for No Huddle Offense on the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, let's start it off with a crazy game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Denver Broncos. The Bengals keep their postseason hopes alive, even though those are slim chances. Broncos still control their own destiny. Even though they lost, they are 9-7 on the season. The Bengals have improved to 8-8. Cincinnati wins 30-24. Some numbers from this one. Joe Burrow, 412 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He leads the NFL in passing yards and passing TDs. T. Higgins set himself up for a big payday this offseason, whether it's with the Bengals or somewhere else. 11 receptions for 131 yards, not 1, not 2, but 3 receiving touchdowns. Jamar Chase had 9 catches for 102 yards. Bo Nix, 219 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and a pick. He's also second amongst rookie QBs in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And Marvin Mims with a really good game, 8 catches for 103 yards, 2 scores. Cortland Sutton also found the end zone as well, 5 receptions for 55 yards. But you go to overtime, and this was a wild one in overtime. You had a missed field goal by the Bengals that would have won them the game. It was a 33-yard field goal by York. Then the Bengals defense was able to force the Broncos to punt, and then 5 plays and 63 yards later, in 1 minute and 13 seconds, you had this walk-off touchdown for the victory for the Bengals.
The Bengals trying to win it from the 3-yard line of Denver. Burrow looking to throw. His pass, it is caught by T. Higgins. Touchdown!
It's over.
Bengals! And the final playoff spot in the AFC will not be decided until the final week of the regular season. The Cincinnati Bengals are still alive as Joe Burrow hits T. Higgins for a game-winning touchdown.
And that, of course, was Dan Horde and Dave Lapham on the Bengals radio network. Nico, what's the question? What do we got cooking up here?
Well, as we heard them say, the last playoff spot in the AFC will not be determined until this upcoming week now. So of the Broncos and Bengals, who deserves that spot more?
Yeah, the Bengals had a crappy start. I would like to see them get in, but I can't say they're the most deserving. The Dolphins did not have a good start to the season either. And you also had the Tua injury. And then you take a look at the Denver Broncos. They've been the most surprising team out of the 3, and they've been the better football team from start to now, and say start to finish, but you still got 1 more week to go. So I would say that it's actually the Broncos who are the most deserving. They're not the best, they're not the most intimidating team if they get in. The Bengals get in, they're the most intimidating. I don't fear really the Miami Dolphins, but the team that deserves it the most, they are the Denver Broncos. Alrighty. The Minnesota Vikings, skull, up against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers had an opportunity to prove that they could actually beat a great team in the NFL. They lost to the Vikings earlier in the season at legendary Lambeau Field. They lost to the Vikings once again. This game is not as close as what the final score does indicate, with it being at 27-25 in favor of the Vikings. Vikings now 14-2. Packers fall to 11-5. At one point, this was a 27-10 game. Entering the fourth quarter with 6:12 to go. The Packers did get a touchdown, and they also got a 2-point conversion. They got also another touchdown to make it 27-25, but they come up short. Sam Darnold put the game away. Darnold was 377 yards passing in this one, had 3 passing touchdowns and a pick. 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions on the season. He's third in the league in passing yards. Jay Jettas, Justin Jefferson, 8 catches for 92 yards. Jalen Naylor had 5 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. Jordan Love, 185 passing yards with the touchdown. He's 19th in the league in passing yards. Josh Jacobs, 17 rushes for 69 yards and a score. And Emmanuel Wilson, 6 rushes for 29 yards and a score. But let's hear Sam Darnold on a 9-yard touchdown strike to Cam Akers. This made it Vikings 27, Packers 10.
Jefferson left, 3 receivers right. Akers jumps to the right, now back to the left. Darnold out of the shotgun, takes the snap, swings it to Akers, turns it up to the 10, to the 5, touchdown! Cam Akers with his 3rd touchdown this season, and Minnesota responds beautifully.
That's the legendary Paul Allen on the Vikings radio network. We got to reach out to Paul this week. I got to try to get him on Thursday, Friday. he may be, no, not maybe. He is my favorite radio play-by-play guy in the NFL. He's always an entertaining listen. But, Nico, when we look back at this Vikings and Packers game, what is your question for me here?
Do you think that the Packers can reach the NFC Championship game?
No. Before the season, I would have said yes. But with what I've seen this year up against the Eagles, they lost. Lions, twice, they lost. Vikings, twice, they lost. Their best victory is either up against the Seahawks or the Texans. They're a good team, but they have not been able to give me a lot of confidence to make me think they could win a wild card round and a divisional round to punch their ticket to the NFC Championship game. So I don't believe that is the case. Alrighty, Panthers have been playing a whole lot better football as of late. Bryce Young is going to be their starter next year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers came off a loss, which was a funky game, to the Dallas Cowboys. Those two teams, they met up this past weekend, and the game wasn't even close yesterday, as Baker Mayfield had not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 passing touchdowns, 27 of 32, 359 passing yards. Bucky Irving had 20 carries for 113 yards, didn't find the end zone. The Bucs as a team ran for 202 yards on the ground. Mike Evans, his Hall of Fame career does continue. 8 receptions for 97 yards and 2 touchdown catches in this one. Tampa Bay wins the game 48-14. They stomped the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are now 4-12 on the season. Bryce Young did have 2 passing touchdowns on 203 passing yards in this one. But the Bucs are alive. The Bucs now control their own destiny. They're 9-7, and if they beat the New Orleans Saints coming up this weekend, they are in the postseason as NFC South champs. 2 years without Tom Brady, and it looks like 2 years that they're going to be in the postseason. Let's get the highlight on this one. Baker Mayfield to Jalen McMillan. This made it 48-14, which was the final score in favor of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
3rd down and 2 now. From the 16, Mayfield shotgun, blitz coming, caught ball. It's inside the 10 to the goal line. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Jalen McMillan, fire the cannons. The rookie does it again.
Fire the cannons, fire the cannons, fire the cannons. Gene Deckeroff, the legendary Gene Deckeroff, on the Buccaneers Radio Network. Nico, question?
Well, the path is pretty clear, as you mentioned, for the Buccaneers. Do you think that they will defeat the Saints on Sunday and advance to the NFL playoffs by winning the South?
Absolutely. And I will be heartbroken. And I don't really have a team to root for in the postseason because of the fact that my team is god-awful after being the standard right now. You know, I'll be fine if the Bills win the Super Bowl. I'll be fine if the Lions win a Super Bowl. Be very happy for both those fan bases. The Vikings, too. Not that I think the Bucs could win a Super Bowl, but if you ask me, would I rather see the Bucs or the Atlanta Falcons? I like Bijan Robinson. I like Michael Penix Jr., but Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Bucky Irving, I'm starting to become a big fan of Bucky Irving. He's won me some money this year with anytime touchdowns. I'd much rather see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in. So I think the Bucs take care of business up against the Saints. And the Falcons, they made their bed, now you lie in it. How dare you treat Bill Belichick like that? Leaving him at the altar. He would never do that to any organization. He'd never take a job and then bail on the job, right? He would never do that, Bill Belichick. But practically, the Atlanta Falcons, Arthur Blank wanted to hire Bill, made Bill think he was going to get the job, and then you allowed stupid voices to get into your head, and that's why you're a stupid organization. You could have the greatest coach of all time, and now you have Raheem Morris, who blew a 10-point lead last night and also doesn't know how to use a timeout correctly. Jeez Louise. So yeah, I'd rather see the Bucs win the NFC South next week, and I think they'll do so. Alrighty, let's start it off with the highlight here. The Washington Commanders are 2 years removed from having that god-awful SOB pig of an owner and Daniel Snyder out of their organization. They also were happy to just be away from Daniel Snyder last year. But this year, it has translated into a franchise-altering move where you have a young quarterback in Jaden Daniels be not only a star, but a superstar. And you have a team that is off to the postseason, and they officially clinched it last night when old man Ertz, Zach Ertz, went walking into the end zone.
Jaden to the gun, Rodriguez to his right. 2 tight ends to the left. Here's the snap. Jaden's going to throw forward. He does. Into the end zone.
What a catch.
Zach Ertz, who wants to go to the playoffs? Touchdown! Touchdown, Washington! They win it overtime! We'll see you in the postseason!
Awesome call from the Commanders Radio Network. Jaden Daniels, 227 yards passing in the game, 3 passing touchdowns and a pick. 16 rushes for 127 yards. My, oh, my. Olamide Zaccheaus had 8 receptions for 85 yards and a touchdown. Zach Ertz had 2 touchdowns in the game. The game winner, obviously, had 6 receptions for 72 yards. Michael Penix Jr., the stats don't do him justice because he put his team in position to win that game, and he had some big-time throws, too. 223 passing yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The Falcons have something in their quarterback. We'll see where Kirk Cousins is going to be this time next year. And Bijan Robinson, 17 rushes for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Drake London had 7 catches for 106 yards as well. Question, por favor.
Well, it's been since 2005 since the Commanders won a playoff game. Is this the year that they get over the hump in the wild card round?
I think there's a chance. So you telling me there's a chance? So right now, if the postseason was to start today, the Commanders would be the 6th seed up against the Rams, who are the 3 seed. And they could win a playoff game this year. They can. You know what? I would probably pick the Rams to win that game. But if you ask me, if you had to put a percentage chance without knowing the matchup on the Commanders winning a postseason game this year, I would say like 35 to 40%. So that's a solid chance for the Washington Commanders. All righty, last one. I thought of a few people during this game. I thought of Sean Marash. I thought of Sean Marash's father, who's finally was on board with the Giants tank, and also my dad. Let me tell you something. I love my father. I don't know if I can watch sports with my dad anymore. This past weekend, I went to his house. Be a good son. Got there Saturday night. He was watching the Rangers, lost his mind. I'm on the couch. He comes out of his room with a scissor and a Chris Drury t-shirt. And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm cutting up this t-shirt. This guy's the worst GM ever. He's like, this team has no heart. He was losing his mind. And then on Sunday, he's in that spot where he knows losing is better for the Giants because then they get their hopeful franchise quarterback. And then Drew Lock decides to be Tom Brady. And Malik Nabers, who's a great young wide receiver, just kept on going off in this game. And the Giants win a game that even when they win, they lose because it takes them from the 1st pick in the draft to the 4th pick. Patriots now are the number 1 pick. You have the Browns and the Titans in at 2 and 3. And both those teams need a quarterback. And there's only 2 really good quarterbacks in this draft. So the Giants win, but it was really a loss. And now I will say this. Patriots, please. Please, please, please. Lose the final week of the season. Have the number 1 pick. And you have all these teams vying for a quarterback that are going to need to move up to the number 1 spot. You move back a few spots. You still really get a good player. And you get future draft capital. Because the Patriots team, outside of Christian Gonzalez and Drake May, there's not a lot there. There's not a lot there. But getting back to the Giants, they won a game that they should have lost. Drew Lock, 309 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. Had 1 passing touchdown in his previous 3 starts combined. Malik Nabers, 171 receiving yards, 7 receptions, 2 passing touchdowns. He eclipsed the 1,000-yard receiving mark on the year. Joe Flacco, 333 passing yards, filling in for the injured Anthony Richardson. 2 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's 2-4 as a record as a starter this year. Jonathan Taylor, 32 rushes for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. 3 straight games with over 100-plus yards for Jonathan Taylor. And Alec Pierce, 6 receptions for 122 yards and a touchdown. Michael Pittman, 9 for a $109 and a touchdown. Man, if you would have told me those were the numbers for the Colts wide receivers before the game, I would have said how many points did they win by. And they ended up losing 35-26 to the New York Football Giants. Just absolutely crazy that they ended up losing that game. You know, how they lose that game, just absolutely embarrassing. And the final score was actually 45-33. Sorry, I went to the highlight first, which you're going to hear right now. This is the Malik Nabers 59-yard touchdown catch, his second of the game. This made it 35-26 in favor of Big Blue.
Lock takes the snap, rolls right, hits Nabers, runs out of a tackle. He's at midfield, down the right sideline to the 30, 20, 15, 10, 5. Malik Nabers, 59 yards. And today has truly been a beautiful day in Malik's neighborhood. His second touchdown of the ball game, and the Giants widen their lead with 8:39 to go.
We all force calls and sayings in Malik's neighborhood. It's a little much for me. And also, Bob Papa sounds miserable there on the Giants Radio Network because he knows, oh no, we're going to miss the draft pick, the quarterback. We're going to have to trade for future resources, or I may have to call another season watching Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. Ay, ay, ay. What a disaster. All righty. Let's get the losing side of this, even though both teams lost, if you really want to look at it. But we're talking about the Colts. Nico, what's the question here?
Well, what are the chances that Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard will be fired after the year?
Chris Ballard should. What an overrated GM. I've been saying this for years. Hickey was such a big defender of his. I told him 3 years ago this guy should have been fired. He's 61, 69, and 1 as an NFL GM. You know, he should be out of a job. Mickey Loomis with the Saints should be out of a job. Chris Greer with the Dolphins should be out of the job. And these GMs, what photos do they have of their owners? Seriously, they got naked photos. Chris Ballard, you got naked photos of Jim Irsay. Hey, man, I don't want to accuse anyone, but told me that there was a naked photo of Jim Irsay and it was in Chris Ballard's possession. Wouldn't shock me. But you have Marlon Jackson ripping the team. You got Pat McAfee ripping the team. You got Peyton Manning, who was a Colt, identifying more as a Denver Bronco than the Indianapolis Colts. So it's crazy. So if Ballard goes, and I think there's a chance Shane Steichen goes, could you say it's unfair? Sure. It's only got 2 years on the job, and he hasn't been horrible. But when you hear about players being late, players not showing up to meetings, that's a bad reflection on Shane Steichen. So I think there is a chance. I wouldn't say it's likely, but Jim Irsay is unpredictable. I would say probably a 30% chance that he's not back next year. Alrighty, that is a no-huddle offense. That is Week 17 in the NFL. He's either the Lions and the 49ers tonight. But what can you really expect out of that one? My picks, I'm 2-0 so far this week. I'll be 3-0 if the Lions cover the 3.5-point spread. So I'm rooting for the Lions, and I think Dan Campbell will be smart, but I do think he will play his guys. And the Niners, they stink. Their season's been over for a week, so they don't really have much to play for. They have nothing to play for at this point. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come on back. We'll wrap up the show on a Monday. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Standing by with the latest sports flash. Here is Pete McCarthy.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
All right, Zach, an NFC Championship game rematch that doesn't quite have the juice expected. Lions receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown asked about blowing that 17-point halftime lead last year.
It hurt. It definitely stung at the time. But we've all, I think, grown from it as players, coaches too, I think.
The Lions were heavy dogs in that game. That won't be the case tonight. There's also a lot of meaning to that game. That will not be the case tonight. The Niners have been banged up all year. They're eliminated from playoff contention. The Lions will play for the number 1 seed in the NFC against the Vikings next week. Really, the only advantage to the Lions to winning this game is if they finish in a tie with the Vikings next week. They would get the number 1 seed if they win tonight. They lose tonight and tie against the Vikings. They would be a wild card team. Former Panthers and Commanders head coach Ron Rivera will interview for the Jets head coaching job. So will Rex Ryan, according to reports. Some drama at the Music City Bowl. Number 19, Missouri and Iowa are tied at 24, under 5 minutes to play in Nashville. 7 NBA games tonight. The Knicks look to run their winning streak to 8 against the Wizards. You get Cavs Warriors, as well as Kings Mavs. I'm Pete McCarthy.
Hey, like us on Facebook. Our handle is INF Sportsnet. That's INF Sportsnet for our Facebook page. This is the Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh my God.
All righty, it's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Ethan in Minnesota says, Zach, if my Minnesota Vikings end up moving on from Sam Darnold, where could he play next season? You could submit a question by tweeting at INSSportsCenter at Zach Gelb using the hashtag AskThePros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. It's a good question, and it's one last week that we did talk about, but when you look back at the way that this week just transpired, and now the Vikings have officially set themselves up win up against the Lions next week. They're the number 1 overall seed. They're the NFC North champs. And then you see also Sam Darnold walking into that locker room after the game like he is a hero because he has played heroic this year. Getting thrown up on players' shoulders, water bottles going everywhere, him getting celebrated in such a big way. It's going to be tough to move on from him. Now, last week, Ben Lieber and I both said we ultimately think he's going to be going elsewhere. And J.J. McCarthy, they're going to hand the baton over to him. I think that gap, though, has closed a lot just in terms of that image that we saw in the locker room after the game. But if they do get rid of Sam, if I'm the Jets, I'd much rather have Sam Darnold next year than Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Sam Darnold want to go back to the Jets. If I'm Sam Darnold, I would be interested in going to Seattle. I'd be interested in going to the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. And the Steelers, I'd rather have Sam Darnold than Russell Wilson right now. If I'm the Seahawks, I'd rather have Sam Darnold than Geno Smith. So those are 3 destinations that if Sam's not going to be back with the Minnesota Vikings, I would say Seattle definitely jumps out. The Jets definitely jump out. And the Steelers definitely jump out. But let's just say if Matthew Stafford retires, imagine him with McVay going to the Rams, and you still got Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and Cooper Kupp. So those are a few destinations we'll throw out there. 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. Lou in Rochester chiming on in. Final show for us in the year of 2024. The next time you will hear us is in 2025 on Thursday. We'll recap all these college football playoff games to get you set for the final regular season week of the NFL season. Lou with Shakin', appreciate you calling.
Hey, Zach, man, long time no talk with you. But listen, I'm not as high on Drake May as you may be, even though, you're a fan. Watching him against the Bills, he came out kind of hot, and then he kind of faded. Kind of reminded me of Chad Pennington, really.
How so?
And then he wasn't able to, as the game wore on, when he needed to be really good, he couldn't really muster what was necessary. And so they may need. I don't know if these 2 candidates that might go early or any good. I haven't kept tabs on him, but then he got injured on a hit that was seemed marginal. He might have concussion issues. He definitely was
So are you saying the Patriots should trade Drake May?
What's that?
Are you saying the Patriots should trade Drake May and take one of these quarterbacks in the draft? Is that what you're saying?
Possibly, if they're good. I haven't really assessed them, though. I don't know.
Yeah.
They might have more trade. He might have more trade value. I didn't really like his fading. I don't think he's going to be.
But his team sucks, right?
What's that?
His team sucks, right?
Yeah, I understand, but it's just what I saw. It's just like what I see. I don't know. He might be better than what he showed in that second half. He didn't show a lot in the second half of that game against the Bills.
All righty, Lou. Appreciate the phone call. I wasn't a big believer of Drake May heading into the draft. I have been so blown away what he's been able to do. And, not to rip Lou's phone call to pieces because I want to end 2024 on a good note. But the Chad Pennington comparison, Chad Pennington was accurate. He didn't have a strong arm. Drake May has a strong arm. Drake May reminds me of a mixture. I see a little Josh Allen in him. I see a little Justin Herbert in him. And I also see some Matthew Stafford in him as well. But this idea of, I didn't like what I saw in the second half up against the Bills when he's throwing the football to Jalen Polk. He's throwing the football to Pop Douglas or whatever they call it. What are we doing? His line sucks. His receivers suck. And he's got nothing to work with. And he's made some big throws this year. And how was Josh Allen in his first year as a quarterback? I'm assuming Lou's a Bills fan. Josh Allen ain't good. So to say then the Patriots, who have found a guy who could be the guy, they should trade him if Drake May, Shedeur Sanders, and Cam Ward were all in the same draft class this year, Drake May would go 1. So you could get more value back for Drake May. But why wouldn't I take the better quarterback of Drake May over Shedeur Sanders, Drake May over Cam Ward, and then still potentially, if you win this week, trade that first overall pick, move back to 2, 3, 4, 5, still get a really good player in theory, and still get maybe a future first-round pick out of it. So here's a hot take. Zach Gelb am not going to be in the camp of trading Drake May right now. Hot take, sizzling hot take. My hand's on fire after just touching the microphone. Come on. And here's what, and I get it, it's a sports talk radio call. And Lou's a nice guy. Lou has called this show for years. But when you say, hey, they should look into trading Drake May, I don't really know much about the other 2 guys in the draft. But what happens if I told you the other 2 guys in the draft, which they don't? What happens if I told you they're god-awful? Right? Like, you're still on board for that just because you didn't love what you saw maybe your first time watching him in the second half up against the Buffalo Bills. And the guy suffers, and he did return to that game up against the Chargers, but he got his bell rung. So now he's going to have a concussion issue when you could bring in a new quarterback and they could get their bell rung as well, and then they would have a concussion issue. I don't know how, when you watch Drake May play this year, that you have so many. I'm not saying he's already great. I'm not saying already he's a top 5 quarterback. That would be asinine. But this idea that this guy can't be a really good quarterback one day with what he's shown this year, I was a non-believer when they drafted him. Non-believer. He has made me believe this year, and he's got me excited with what he's been able to do because he's done more with less this year. They asked him to go play quarterback this year when he has no line and no wide receivers. So how about they go get him T. Higgins? How about you go maybe get a Travis Hunter in the draft, or you get him an actual lineman? Let's start there before we talk about trading Drake May. All right, that will do it for the Zach Gelb Show today on the Infinity Sports Network. College football playoff picks. We take Boise State to beat Penn State. I am going to go Texas slightly over Arizona State. I have Oregon beating Ohio State. And I will take Notre Dame. Notre Dame up against Georgia. We are off tomorrow. We are off Wednesday. We are back here Thursday and Friday to break all down everything that happened from the college football playoff, get you set for the NFL in Week 18, and then some. Have a happy new year. We appreciate each and every one of you that listen to us all throughout the year, and we're going to have a great 2025, and it all gets started Thursday, right at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. Azaram, Nico, great job as always. We'll talk to you coming up on Thursday, everybody. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.
You're in a 5-minute break.